Welcome, everyone. I now
Recording in
call.
progress.
All right, the voice from above is gone. I now call the December 6, 2022 regular City Council meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The City of Bothell is now providing the option of attending council meetings remotely or in person. Public comment will be allowed both in writing or verbally. Verbal comments may be taken either in person or remotely. Sign-up sheets were provided online by the City Clerk's office via link from the agenda. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting. If you have called in, we ask that you mute your device so as not to interfere with the meeting. If a participant fails to mute their connection and causes a disruption to the meeting, the connection will be terminated. At this point, we will take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Zorns,
Here.
Mayor Thompson,
Here.
Councilmember Alders,
Here.
Councilmember McNeil,
Here.
Councilmember Mankey,
Here.
Councilmember Dodd,
Here.
and Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking, and mute your microphone when not speaking. The first item on the agenda is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public engagement opportunities. On December 8th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m., there will be the community meeting for Stormwater Management Action Plan. Register for this online meeting to learn about the SMAP process and Stormwater Actions Plan for the Lower North Creek Surface Water Management Area. You can learn more at bothellwa.gov/SMAP. The Winter Porch Light Parade. You can help transform Bothell into a magical wonderland of lights by joining us for the 3rd annual Winter Porch Light Parade. Registration is open November 14th through December 14th. You can learn more at bothellwa.gov/porchlightparade. There's going to be a community blood drive at Bothell Police on December 20th. You can join Bothell Police and Bloodworks Northwest for a blood drive in the Bothell Police Community Room. The number of serious vehicle crashes increases during the holidays, but blood donations decrease. Your blood donation can save a life. Signing up for an appointment time is easy. You can learn more at bit.ly/BPDGiveBlood. All right. And moving on to a staff briefing on the Safe Place program. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Stannard.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Tonight we do have 2 items under staff briefings, both from our police department and both, I think, encouraging themes around how our team is being able to work within the community. The first is a staff briefing about the Safe Place program, which is a regional effort and maybe somewhat familiar to council. And we wanted to make sure to get some more information to you and also be able to start sharing with the community. So here tonight to tell us more is Officer Kayla Kwake. Kayla, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Officer Kayla Kwake. Today I'll be doing a presentation on a newly implemented program for the city of Bothell called Safe Place. Just a little background for this program. It was launched in 2015 as a law enforcement sponsored and overseen initiative born out of a need to address low reporting of anti-LGBTQ plus crimes and school bullying incidents by increasing public trust in law enforcement and feelings of safety in the community. The program was expanded in 2018 to include anyone who may have been a victim of a biased crime. The program was initially implemented by Seattle Police Department. There are over 7,000 businesses throughout Seattle that are a part of this program, and this program also has been carried on throughout the United States to over 300 police agencies including Canada, and now they're trying to implement it in Europe as well. How Safe Place operates, it's a unique partnership with the businesses and community and schools that serve a critical role in assisting the victims of these crimes. Businesses and schools that participate place an easily recognizable decal at their entrances that are ultimately provided by us at the time of signing up for this program. This symbol is a signal for victims of hate crimes that this location has partnered with police, Bothell Police, when it's implemented with us. We'll call 911 on their behalf, and it will allow them a safe place to stay until police can arrive and take the report from there. The message that this program sends to our community is that no matter your background or status, that you will be heard. You'll be treated with care and dignity and respect from the businesses that you enter, as well as from the police officers that respond to investigate the potential crime. So we at Bothell Police serve to strive the members of our community. This Safe Place program is directly in line with our vision, our mission, and our core values. Our mission statement at Bothell is to serve together to protect our city, and that's really important that through this program we continue to display that to our community to show them how much we care. Our core values, service, honesty, integrity, excellence, loyalty, and duty are also very important, that we continue to hold to our core values no matter who we're speaking to or what they're going through. So that's really important that each of these is shown through this program. The Safe Place program is designed for all hate crimes. So a hate crime is considered anyone who maliciously and with intent commits a criminal act and based on their perception of the victim's race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender expression or identity, or mental, physical, or sensory disability. That's a mouthful, but it's important that each person recognized in these particular groups feels that they have a safe place to go if they do feel that they're in danger, or that they do feel if they've been a victim of a hate crime. The best thing about this program is it's free. So right now we're in the process of designing our stickers that will be displayed in all of the windows in businesses that would like to participate in this program. Through this program, we will provide the sticker, we will provide all training material, because each business that chooses to be a part of this will need to train their employees on how to treat the matter if someone does come into their business that needs help. They will also be provided a Safe Place flyer with more information on hate crimes, what's considered a hate crime, and how to respond appropriately. So like I said, the businesses that in schools that choose to participate in this program will have to train their employees and staff. There needs to be a public and safe place for their victims. The business needs to be open during normal business hours, so that in case an incident does occur, that the person has a safe place to go, and at that point they are required to call 911 so police can take over the investigation and make sure that we handle it accordingly. That is the end of my presentation. Is there any questions that anyone has for me?
Councilmember Zorns.
Just one question. I know that in the school system, if there is a child who is being abused, that there is a legal responsibility to contact authorities. Does that also apply for this, or is that something that you just make that call when that happens? If
So initially, we will be focusing on the hate crimes portion. When we receive more resources for the bullying portion, we will roll out more information to schools in regards to that. But you are right, it is required that police are contacted, and it has nothing to do with Safe Place at the moment, but it will once we gather more information.
Okay, so for schools, absolutely, but for stores, that might be, in places of business, that might be different, or?
I can chime in on that. So the Safe Place program is designed to be simply that. It's designed to be a safe place for people to get away from the danger, and a business that is safe that will call 911 on their behalf. It's designed for hate crimes. But like any business, I'm relatively confident that if you go into a business and ask them to call 911, most businesses will comply. I feel especially confident with the Safe Place program that they're not going to ask a bunch of questions to drill down into exactly why you're looking for Safe Place. They're trained to call us and to create an environment where the person who's being victimized or threatened is kind of in a safer environment.
Okay, so sometimes, people who are, especially people who are in a chronic abusive situation, they will back down and say, no, I'm fine. And I'm guessing that you would just make that judgment call on a case-by-case basis. I'm just picturing somebody going into a business and then saying, no, don't call 911. I just need a place to feel safe for a while. And what would the recommendation, I'm curious, do you have a policy of what that recommendation would be for business owners when somebody's clearly in an abuse situation, but they don't want the police called?
I can answer that. So typically, if somebody comes into a business and displays emotions as if they're distraught or something occurred, the business typically calls us to do what's called a welfare check, where police respond to check on that person and to make sure that they're okay. We'll do more questioning to try to understand where they're coming from or what they're going through, and go from there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Of course.
Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this presentation. I have definitely seen these stickers around, right? Not in Bothell, but I've seen them around in the area, and I've been curious about this program. So I really do appreciate the presentation that you're here tonight, and that this program is expanding into Bothell. I'm really grateful to learn more about it and how it's supposed to work. And I just hope that we'll see many of the local businesses around here displaying the sticker. It really, it does make a difference for the LGBTQ community, especially, to know that there is support throughout the wider community, that they can go into businesses and feel welcome and safe there, even if they're not under threat or in danger, even if there's no police needing to be called. That visual reminder is a way to communicate. There was a few years ago, the Dive-In Committee here in Bothell put up a banner in the lobby in City Hall, and I will never forget it. And it was about a poem about not having room for hate. And I think that this program communicates that. So thank you very much. One question I do have, and this might be beyond the scope of your presentation tonight, but I am aware that in the last week or so, the Department of Homeland Security issued an increased threat risk for domestic terror directed at the LGBTQ community. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that and what the city response might be.
So I will hand that over to Chief Seuberlich.
Thank you. A great question. I am familiar with the document that you're talking about. It's not just the LGBTQ. It's pretty broad. It talks about school violence. It talks about sporting events, large gathering, holiday gatherings, attacks on law enforcement. It's a pretty broad document. And what the Department of Homeland Security is trying to do is help people realize to be aware of your surroundings. And if you see something, say something. Specifically, I think the timing for Safe Place is on point with this particular flyer that the Department of Homeland Security put out. Just so everybody's aware, the State Fusion Center, they compile data and they share that with us if there is a direct threat in our region or in our city that they're aware of. We have not received any actual threat. This is more broad, national, everybody be aware of your surroundings. If you see something, say something, and that they actually have a plan. And part of that plan is communicating those dangers out, which they do in the actual bulletin that I have here. But it's pretty broad. But this is just another example of, why we wanted to put this program together here locally. I will say this has been on our agenda for a few years, and then COVID, and so that really threw the brakes on things. But I think the timing is right, and I'm super excited about getting businesses and schools involved in this program for our community.
I appreciate the clarification on that, and just sort of the helping it be in the context of how it is local. That we also have state agencies that are assessing risk too. So thank you very much.
Not everybody all at once. All right, I just want to say thanks, that I really appreciate that we're participating in this. Not just because of the service that it provides for somebody in distress who needs our help, but also just the public display of support from businesses for members of the LGBTQ community. This is a community that is historically marginalized, that has experienced far greater rates of violence and harm, and anything that we can do to make sure that everybody feels that Bothell is a welcoming home is something well worth doing. So thank you to the department. I really appreciate everybody that was involved in helping get this off the ground. Thank you. All right, moving on, we have another staff briefing. City Manager.
Yeah, and I think since he's all warmed up, I will, as he gets his slides pulled up, I'll be turning it over to Chief Seuberlich to talk about the creation of a Chiefs Equity Advisory Committee and what he's hoping to accomplish with that program. So Chief, take it away.
Thank you, City Manager Stannard. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. And for those in the audience, I am Ken Seuberlich, Chief of Police. The purpose of my presentation tonight is to share the Bothell Police Department, their creation of the Police Advisory Council. This has been a project that has been in the making for quite some time, and we're super excited to get this program off the ground as well. The mission of the Bothell Police Department is to protect life and property through professional services and a proactive partnership with our community, all of our community. To further our mission, in the fall of 2019, we began the exploratory process of creating a Community Advisory Council. The foundational goal for establishing this advisory council was and is to better partner with our community members and include those who have been underrepresented and overlooked. As we progressed with this plan, COVID and some other events struck and altered our timeline, and ultimately the plan was paused. Fast forward to 2022, the Bothell Police Department, with funds from our existing budget, has contracted with Shannon Kelly Ray to assist with the creation and facilitation of this advisory council. Ms. Kelly Ray has a vast amount of experience in this kind of project and brings a wealth of knowledge to this endeavor. As stated previously, the foundational goals for establishing this advisory council was and is to better partner with members of our community, including those who have been underrepresented and overlooked. As we build this council, we will strive to have an improved understanding and a heightened awareness of the many challenges and successes that exist with our increasingly diverse community. We will do this by creating a community-based volunteer advisory council with a direct line of communication between my office and the community we serve. By doing this, I hope to create opportunities where we can all listen, learn, and build relationships. This advisory council will advise me, the Chief of Police, on equity, transparency, and community relation issues. Further, this council will advise me on ways the police can positively impact the relationships with those we serve. The opportunity will also allow the community to help influence policies, processes, and services, while allowing our department to better understand our community's issues and experiences. so that we might find opportunities to better communicate, engage, and improve our services. We hope to engage a group of up to 25 volunteers. Now, I know that sounds like a large number, but from my experience in researching on this, things come up and not everybody can attend all meetings. And we also want to make sure that our council represents as many lived experiences as possible in the Bothell community. For the purposes of this advisory council, a community member is anyone that lives in Bothell, works in Bothell, or has a strong tie and/or interest in the city of Bothell. Meetings will be held bi-monthly. They will be 2 hours in length and will be organized as a hybrid meeting to increase accessibility and encourage regular and ongoing participation. The requirements to be on the advisory council are just a few. One, you must be a Bothell resident, a business owner, employee, property owner, student, volunteer, interested stakeholder, or nonprofit partner. We've tried to keep that pretty broad. Volunteers must be at least 16 years of age, must commit to regularly attending advisory council meetings. We also recognize there will be exceptions. Life happens. And can be existing City of Bothell board or commission members. Lastly, no background checks will be administered and individuals who are justice impacted will be allowed to participate. In creating this new advisory council, the Bothell Police Department and I welcome applications from all interested community members. We welcome all races, genders, religions, abilities, disabilities, sexual orientation, gender identities and expressions, and other factors of identity regardless of economic status or citizenship. Additionally, any applicant's immigration status shall not preclude any applicant from serving on this council. An applicant's immigration status will not be checked, verified, or shared with any local, state, or federal law enforcement or government agency. This month, I'll be working with our staff and our consultant to complete the design of our selection metric and the scoring system to ensure fairness, inclusion, and accessibility. The application process period begins on December 7th at 8 a.m. and will remain through December 30th at 7 p.m. The Advisory Council's selection process will occur on or before January 6th of 2023. Again, the goal is to have a council that consists of a broad cross-section of our community, paying particular attention to those groups who are historically marginalized, underutilized, and underrepresented. The term for members will be 1 year, but can be renewed. We will also encourage, but not require, participants to attend the Bothell Police Community Academy to broaden their understanding of local police operations, policies, and functions. The first 3 meetings of the Advisory Council will be devoted to planning. The first order of business will be developing the council's name, mission, and vision. This will be followed by developing a process for what they do, how they do it, and for whom they do it for. Our consultant, Ms. Kelly Ray, will facilitate this process. And as listed on the screen, our first 3 meetings will take place on January 11th, January 25th, and February 8th from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. The remainder of the meetings will take place on March 8th, May 10th, July 12th, September 13th, and November 15th. Again, those meetings will be from 6 to 8 p.m. In closing, the Bothell Police Department and I are committed to creating deeper relationships with those we serve and look forward to the insights that we will receive from our community members. And lastly, a quote that I think we've all heard, "Build nothing for us without us," is a guiding principle as this advisory council moves forward. And I am available for questions.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chief. This is really exciting. I really appreciate just the way that you've intentionally tried to create a very welcoming application process. I look forward to maybe having you come back in January to tell us who was selected, kind of give us an overview. I think this is a really great step, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm really excited. I'd be happy to come back and share that.
Councilmember Zorns?
have conflicted feelings about this. I would love to be a fly on the wall and hear the conversation. However, I also think not having an audience would create a more open conversation. So if at any point members would be invited to just listen to the conversation, I would love to know about it. But if it doesn't facilitate a conversation, an honest, relaxed, we're not in a fishbowl. I understand if if you say, no, we just want it, 26 and no more. So.
Well, I will say that one of the goals that we have, I don't know if it'll be all the meetings. I think it'll kind of come out in the formation. I want the council to kind of design this program for themselves and how they want to be able to communicate from the community to me on things that are important to them. Ideally, having these open so people could log on to Zoom or whatever process it is, that they can observe the meetings. I know that there is a part of this program that we plan on doing that with. I just don't know if it's going to be all of the meetings.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Keep us posted.
I will.
Councilmember Aldrichs.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for putting in this effort and being willing to open your work to this kind of collaborative approach. I have a couple questions. One of them is this being modeled after other programs, other committees that exist throughout the country? And can you tell us more about the process that you and our consultant went through to determine that this would be the model you would use?
Yes, that is a great question. This is kind of an interesting program, the development of this. Sometimes it's kind of strange to me how the stars just align. When I was first looking at trying to develop a program to help communicate better with the community, we didn't know exactly what we were looking for. And what we found is what I was looking for was really rather close by. The program that I had an opportunity to observe is one of our neighboring cities, the city of Redmond. And I've had quite a few conversations with the police chief down there. He really likes the program that he has, and it's modeled similar to that. But the key component to this is the part that I like about it the most is the community decides how their program is built. Okay, I created a kind of a loose framework of what I want. I want honest feedback from the community on what's important to them. What are the issues? What are their struggles? What's working? And that's driven by the members of this council. They create their own name. Right now, I'm calling it a community advisory council. They could call it something completely different than that. I think in Redmond, it's called the Chiefs Equity Advisory Team. But that's up to them to build that out. But the main component is being able to share that information with me, the chief of police, directly, and having that open line of communication. I will say one of the things that really caused me to focus on trying to build something like this. We have our coffee with the cop, we have our chat with the chief, you have your things that you do out in the public, and we reach people in the community, but we're not reaching everybody in the community. We're not really going deep. The people that are afraid of the police, they don't go to those typically. And how do I hear from them? I try to create an environment where they feel safe. They don't have to come to the meeting. They can do it via hybrid. I'm not going to, check their background. I want to hear from them. I want to hear what's impacting them here locally and what we can do to help them. So though what I saw, I liked out of Redmond, and then I found out that Shannon, Kelly Ray, was actually their facilitator for that, and then COVID. And then by chance, the city ended up contracting with her after the fact. And so I guess I will say I lucked out. She's already on contract. It just was an additional contract that I had to add an addendum to. And it works well. I've had quite a few meetings with her. I'm really excited where this is going.
Well, you answered my next question, which was if the contracting or the consulting contract was in addition to the contract that the city had, and you said yes, it was. And so that is Bothell Police budget that's being used for this to work with Shannon Kelly Ray as a consultant. And then you also said something really interesting about public engagement efforts and not being able to reach the people most impacted and those that you are actually trying to then recruit for this committee. And so I'd like to know what kind of recruitment efforts are you participating in, engaging in, that kind of gets beyond the standard, public announcement, like try to get the word out.
Another great question. So if I had the answers, I would already be able to reach out to those people. I don't. That's part of the contract that I have with Shannon Kelly Ray on this, and working with our current staff on our community outreach efforts. The fact of the matter is we actually have a pretty good list of people to contact to do those deep dives. One of the things that works well is if the chief of police calls you and you don't like the police, you're probably not going to pick up the phone to begin with, and you're probably not going to call me back. By having a contractor who's a facilitator in this and really can explain it better without fear of police involvement, I think that works for us. So getting down into those communities that aren't likely to contact us, that's where the contract services really come into play.
That's great. And I'm glad that you're getting that support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Just want to say thank you. I don't have Councilmember Alder to ask all the questions, and they're good. I mean, they're good questions, so they're comprehensive, and I really understand that it's. By the way, I have the YouTube thing streaming here just so that I'll see how many people are doing. But then I just saw I'm wearing this. World Cup is going on, so it's representing World Cup and the local soccer teams. So. But thank you again for this, and thank you for the SAFE programs. I didn't get a chance to thank you then. This is very important to get community input in, and feel free to reach out to us and get our help to reach to some of those communities that you want to go after.
Oh, absolutely, I will.
Go after in a good way. So
Thank you.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm trying to keep mine brief because I'm trying to keep my voice here, but thank you first and foremost for the presentations. The one previously talking about safe spaces is important conversations that we have within our community. So I'm encouraged by the fact that we're reaching out to community members to have them participate. But can you go back to the slide that had the timeframes on it? So in totality, long term, thinking forward, we talked about 1 year serving on this advisory committee for 1 year. Is your thought to build this advisory committee that is going to be an ongoing thing that we can include more and more individuals throughout our community, or is this just 25 people, that's it?
I'm pretty flexible on most things. 25 is what was recommended. And to be honest, when I heard 25, it's like, wow, that's a lot of people. I don't know, I've had plenty of meetings. 25 seems like a lot to manage. However, the goal is to hear from as many people as possible in the community. And I recognize not everybody's going to be able to show up at meetings. I'd like to keep it about 25. Ideally, what I'd like to see is very much like other boards and commissions where, we flip-flop, you're on for a couple years, and then 2 years later, we have another group that can come on. So initially, we're asking for a 1-year commitment because we want to make this accessible. People have lives, and I'm concerned that, overcommitment can be one of those things, and I want to be cognizant of that. And by doing the hybrid, if you have children at home, you want to participate, but, childcare is expensive. Allowing opportunities for people to do that remotely was one of my goals. So I'm flexible in how we design this. I recognize this is a work in progress, and things can be tweaked to suit our community's needs. And that's really the key thing as we build this out. It's suiting the community's needs, not mine.
Okay, and thank you for that, because to me, the number 25 is a small portion that represents our community, right? 25 individuals, and if you could have 50 or 100 that are participating, even if it's part-time or not full-time, is participation, and that participation can grow into additional participation. So thinking long-term for me, even if you got an individual involved and they're not fully involved, having them involved and having their voice at the table, listening to their lens, sometimes can be more important than not having them at the table just because they don't fit into that 25 model. The other piece is the having Shannon Kelly Ray facilitate this. I think you spoke a little bit about, police chief calls you. If you don't want to talk to the police, you're probably not going to answer that. Do you feel that that is really going to get more individuals within our community to participate in this by not having you reaching out personally, or do you feel that she's just going to help get more involvement from the community?
Yeah, I do believe that the people that I really want to try to reach out to are typically not the people that are wanting to reach out to me. And so I feel that having a third party assist in that's kind of a neutral ground that has that reputation already in the region, I think that's helpful. I think once we get this program rolling and we start building those relationships, and that's really what this boils down to. It's about relationships and listening to your community. I think it will expand from there, and people will be more comfortable speaking to me or calling me. And just for the record, I think anybody in the community can call me. I think my email's listed on the webpage, and my phone number is pretty accessible. So if anybody has questions, they can always call me. And I do return phone calls. So.
Thank you. I know you do an amazing job within our community. I see that, the officers out, all the wonderful things that we do. I think breaking down those barriers, the relationship barriers is what I'm referring to, so that people feel safe and comfortable talking to the police, I think is an important thing. We've often had conversations about, as I grew up as a kid, I looked at police differently, and that's just because I had more interactions with them in a positive way with trading cards or whatever it might have been. But as long as we can have those interactions, and the more interactions that we can have across, King and Snohomish County portion of our community, I think the closer we will become with the public safety officers that are on the street serving us. So I look forward to seeing this program grow and this opportunity, and thankful that we're able to take and leverage other cities that have tried it before us and not recreate the wheel ourselves. So thank you for being proactive with that.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Given a moment. Chief, just a couple things. I'm not going to reiterate what everybody said, but really appreciate that you've done what you can to make people from communities who are typically negatively impacted by interactions with the police a part of this. And also just that you've done your best to address some of the concerns that people from those communities might have. I'm excited to get this off the ground. I'm excited that this came from our department. I'm proud of y'all and appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next up, we have a city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have 3 items on for tonight. And the first one is a moment to say thank you to our many, many staff who have had a very busy week since we last met. And I want to highlight in particular our public safety teams, members of the Parks Department and Public Works. So our November 18th meeting, we had a winter preparedness snow and ice response briefing from our Operations Deputy Director of Public Works, Jacqueline Brandenburg. And then tying it all together last Tuesday, we were in this very room interviewing board and commission, you were interviewing board and commission candidates while our weather apps all said it was raining, our eyes told us it was snowing. And that was the first of several opportunities for snow. And so the thank you is, again, there's cross-departmental teams working on this. And then within our public works department itself, we had 27 individuals out responding and doing things like snow plowing, spreading de-icer, salting the roads and moving ice that was built up. Believe it or not, some street signs get damaged when cars are sliding, and so some of those were replaced. There was a number of trees that went down. There was power that was out and some coordination that had to go out in terms of keeping the roads safe that way. And also just, again, getting power back up for our residents when it's very, very cold. Being able to be responsive to the police department when they were calling and saying, hey, we need your help. And, with all of that, what it took is 24-hour crew operations. And when you think about this in terms of when we have snow that comes at night, especially in the unpredictable climate of the Puget Sound, we didn't wake up that morning expecting to have much of a response. And so these crews worked a full day, went home, needed to turn around and come back. And that's what they did. And they did it safely and they did it responsibly. And they did it for the Bothell community. So I'm really grateful for that. There's still some post cleanup events that's going to happen. We're watching some slow melt off, which is helpful. And but all in all, what I really wanted to just do a quick shout out to is, again, great team in this, led by our street operations manager, Chad Holt. And a few of us, so Nick and Aaron and Tony and I were able to go out to, there was an appreciation lunch and a after action report, because again, we expect we might get some more snow too. And it was particularly important because made up of our crews this time, we had 13 individuals who have been part of a snow response before, and 13 who there's their first time. So really a great showing of teamwork, of helping have half rookies, half veterans, and being able to share and help people be successful. And I thought that after action was a great opportunity to see that too, of the continued lessons learned and sharing. All in all, what it took to keep Bothell as a safe place to move around. And I've been hearing since I got here that when there's snow, when you're on Bothell roads and when you're not. And I definitely got to witness that myself. It took 704.5 hours, and then this is a quote from the team. They win quote of the week, and it's only Tuesday. Those hours were devoted to snow fighting mayhem, turning rookies and warriors into warriors, and serving the spectacular city of Bothell. So thank you to the crews. Next, I want to amplify an advertisement of that as we sit here looking out the window, not seeing snow tonight. What we are seeing is the backside of art. I'm a big Disney fan where you get to see the backside of water on the Jungle Cruise. Tonight we're seeing the backside of art. And what that is the Bothell Community Tapestry, Hands of Bothell. You may remember from our summer series that there was art being collected. And throughout the past year, there was a collaborative concept from the creator and arts facilitator, Katrina Sather, who organized interactive art activities to create a community tapestry to show an immersive experience for everybody to enjoy. So I encourage people in the community, as you're coming by City Hall, take a minute to look in the windows into council chambers to see this. It's over 300 community members participated, and this tapestry is being titled The Hands of Bothell, which represents our vibrant, growing, and diverse community. This art will be installed through early 2023 and is a great, again, opportunity to come and celebrate what makes Bothell unique, and one of the many things of when we rotate art through City Hall. So for those who come and visit, there's always something new to see, and I'd encourage them to come take a look and appreciate it. Then lastly, I do have another introduction. We're on a run of staff hiring. We'll have another in January. And tonight, though, I'm really pleased to introduce the individual on my left. Tony Call has joined the city this week as the deputy city manager, filling a vacancy. And we're continuing. I know when I first started, it was noted to me, in case I hadn't noticed, we had 4 interims on the executive leadership team, and we're chipping away at that. So Tony comes to us from the city of Bellevue, where she was serving as the director of the Finance and Asset Management Department. Tony has worked in public service for her career, both at the city of Bellevue and at King County, and we're really, really fortunate to have her leadership here in Bothell. And what I will testify to is that one of the things that I appreciate about Tony is her ability to really investigate into the why, to look for evidence, have conversations. But she's somebody who's extremely gifted with numbers and being data-driven, but one of the most unique individuals that I've ever worked with, who also puts people at the center of all of that. And it's one of the reasons I respect her so much. And I'm happy to have her here and introduce you to her tonight. And I think Tony has a few words.
Thank you, City Manager Standard. I appreciate that. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members, it is an honor to be here this evening, and truly wonderful to actually be joining Team City of Bothell. It is an outstanding organization, an outstanding community, and I truly look forward to serving you and to serving the organization and to serving all the people who come to this fair city to live, work, play, or learn as they continue on with their day. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to serving you in the future. City Manager.
All right, with that, we've made it through our 3 items. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Antonio. We're really happy to have you. Thank you for being here. Council committee reports. Councilmember Zorns.
I have a couple. One is Raya 8, and I will try to make it brief because I think a few of you last time I saw eyes starting to roll up in the back of your head. So I'll try to keep the it's a long meeting, but it's just packed full of all kinds of good things. So it was discussion of budget. In November, and then a few numbers that I thought might interest you. The Sammamish Chinook was 19% of natural spawn, not farm hatchery. They were natural spawning, which is good. That's almost 20%. And then, sorry, it's winter hazards here. The other thing is there is a surprising number of jacks, which are, for salmon trivia, salmon that goes out and spends one winter or less out in, in the ocean. And there's been an increasing number of jack salmons. There's always been in the sockeye population, but now it's starting to show up in Chinook. And the last is MPRSA. We voted on a 1% tax increase on the levy. And I think why it got so much support was that for most homeowners, it's less than 10 cents a year. It was kind of a no-brainer. We could handle 10 cents a year. And then, but the other big news, and I'm going to need Councilmember McNeil to verify this on the numbers, is that a youth sports center is becoming a reality. There's been $325,000 added to the $750,000 for design, and Best Starts for Kids could be a tool for helping to design that. So we're moving forward for a sports youth facility center here at the north end of Lake Washington, which is very exciting. I don't know if Councilmember McNeil would like to add anything to that.
I'll just go real quick. So yes, it's about just over $1,050,000 that Councilmember Dombrowski from King County has allotted out of his appropriations, along with Councilmember Perry. So those are coming from them directly. The Best Starts for Kids levy will be something that we can leverage in the future once we have a project identified. So there's a lot of work that still is left to be done, but great news that people are working on it, and hopefully the youth here within our North Shore area, the 20,000+ students, will hopefully soon have a place they can call home, in a safe space they can call home to go work on their tutoring and classroom activities and being out social and active and in training for sports. So we're super excited that after 6.5+ years of working on this, that it's the conversation is going into looking at future sightings and possibility of bringing it to the North Shore area. So thank you.
Councilmember McNeil, I know you've been a huge champion of that for your time in office, and I know that's something that's been a focal point for you, so thank you. Appreciate it. All right, I don't see anybody else. I went to the Puget Sound Regional Council's Executive Board meeting last week. There were a few things on the agenda. The main thing that I think this body would be interested in is the legislative agenda that was passed. And I think it's a legislative agenda that this particular body would enjoy very much. There was a lot of really good stuff on there surrounding land use and transportation. And I'm glad to have PSRC advocating for good stuff at the state level. All right, visitor comment. The city has accepted visitor comment in writing as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. City clerk, do we have any sign-ups?
We do. Thank you, Mayor. Before I read the sign-up list, I want to mention that we received one written comment from Cindy Fuller, who wrote regarding the Waynita Sammamish salmon restoration design alternatives. And also I wanted to make a note that council received a number of emails regarding the same topic and that were sent outside of the formal comment process. But we wanted to make sure you and anyone who's listening that all of those emails sent to council were forwarded to staff for response and will be included in the presentation tonight. So for signups to speak this evening, I have 4 folks who are here in the audience tonight. And I would like to start with Whitney Niggebauer. Whitney, if you'd like to come up and turn on the mic, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Just push that button. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. This evening's agenda includes an item concerning salmon habitat at the former Wayne Golf Course. This is a really important project to take our time with and get right. If we plan carefully, we can ensure the best outcomes rather than rushing it. I've led groups of volunteers and students with Whale Scout helping to restore habitat at the former Wayne Golf Course since 2019. Just over the last 12 months, we've accumulated over 1,100 hours of service. This demonstrates that the community really has a lot of support for the environment at this project, or at this park, sorry. Last week, I spoke to council about constraints to the project and how they limit benefits to salmon, including the position of the planned regional trail, the current footbridges that are on site, and the limited 200-foot buffer on the left bank of Waynita Creek, which would extend into the passive use parcel. Right now, we're only at 10% design. In order for improvements to be integrated into the design, allowing for greater restoration, the consultants and staff would need this information sooner rather than later, prior to moving to 30% design. I recommend not approving a design alternative unless these amendments are made. Additionally, today I'll describe some improvements that would offer greater ecological benefits for salmon. Number 1, adding large woody debris to the Sammamish River, not just Waynita Creek. Large wood helps stabilize the bank and naturally creates cool, deep water pools for fish so they can take cover and rest. While the Sammamish River is considered a navigable waterway, there are opportunities to add wood to the river in a careful manner that maintain navigability, with examples within the city of Bothell. Number 2, ask the consultants to consider incorporating functions explored in Alternative 2 to Alternative 4, which would reconnect the Sammamish River floodplain and add greater habitat complexity, something that Chinook would benefit from. These functions would also give the city an advantage when it comes to grant funding, as there are flood control grants which support multi-benefit projects. These additions to the design alternatives presented would benefit Chinook salmon and therefore endangered southern resident killer whales. The city stands in a fabulous position to make a significant difference for our ecosystem and lead the way for other communities along the Sammamish River. Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney. Next, we have David Bain.
Hi, I'm Dr. David Bain, speaking to you as a board member of One Bothell and the Snow King Watershed Council, and as Chief Scientist for Orchid Conservancy. While we like many of the elements of Alternative 4, such as plans to reconnect wetlands and groundwater to Waynita Creek, it does not go far enough to meet the needs of salmon. It does a poor job of meeting the public's need for ADA accessible trails. Adding a side channel as included in Alternative 2 would be an important addition to Alternative 4. This will require removing the lower bridge over Waynita Creek. Removing the bridge makes room for a delta above the side channel, and replacing it with an elevated ADA accessible trail farther from the river will provide an opportunity for natural channel migration and native vegetation to grow both above and beneath the trail, as well as an expanded riparian buffer as proposed in state bills for net ecological gain. The side channel would provide a smaller body of water where the creek joins the river, providing a better cool water refuge for migrating salmon than the direct connection in Alternative 4. The side channel would be a place for large woody debris that would not impair the navigability of the main channel. Soil removed would increase the capacity of the Army Corps of Engineers flood control facility and contribute to climate change resilience. The through channel would provide a path upriver for migrating salmon, in contrast to the dead end in Alternative 4. The ratio of warm river water to cool creek water could be adjusted by the size of the openings to the river. While adding a side channel will increase the cost of the project, it is a cost-effective approach to salmon recovery that does not require taking homes or businesses, and community members can assist the city with grant writing, just as we helped with grants to raise over $10 million for the purchase of North Creek Forest and Wayne, as well as toward the purchase of Shelton View Forest. While improving ecological function of the site beyond what is proposed in Alternative 4 will increase the cost, it will also increase competitiveness of the project for grants, making it easier to obtain funding from outside the city. Routing the trail through the Phase 2 parcel could reduce the cost of purchasing the development rights for the remainder of that parcel. We urge you to direct the consultant and staff to include a side channel and elevated trail in the design to be advanced to the next stage of planning to make the former Wayne Golf Course a better contributor to the recovery of Endangered Species Act listed Chinook salmon, coho salmon that are food for endangered southern resident killer whales, and the last remaining Kokanee Run in Lake Washington. It would become a more enjoyable place for residents of Bothell and neighboring communities than under Alternative 4 as is. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, we have, sorry about that. We have David Habowitz.
Thank you. Can you tell me the timing, how the timing lights are?
I believe it
Green,
turns,
yellow, red?
yeah, let me reset real quick. It turns yellow when you have 30 seconds.
That's what I need here. Thank you. Toastmasters, we have more time. This is exciting to be back here. It's been a while since I've been before the council, so I appreciate all of you. And I'm here actually for a pretty important reason as a board member of One Bothell. And I wanted to speak a little bit more detail about the Alternative 1 with some of the improvements that we wanted to recommend. And that is with Alternative 4 to do some improvements here. One, to make the trails ADA compliant by using elevated boardwalks. And then to make sure you to locate those at least 200 feet from the river wherever possible. So from that, there's a long list of benefits that come with the elevated boardwalks over the trails on the ground. Think of it during the 6 to 8 months of the rainy season. A trail directly on the ground becomes muddy and difficult for people or dogs in wheelchairs to walk on. From an ecological perspective, where puddles form on the trail on the ground, hikers will walk around the puddle, widening the trail and causing more erosion. That doesn't happen on a boardwalk. Vegetation and ground cover will grow better under the boardwalk. A boardwalk creates separation of the people from the wildlife, such as snakes, for those of who are afraid of snakes, and rabbits and other wildlife. Surface water flows freely and seeps into the ground better under a boardwalk than it does under a compacted trail. Typically, you'll lay gravel on the trail as well, which makes it even worse. Vegetation on the sides of the boardwalk grows better because the soil around the roots doesn't get compacted. Rainwater sheds and flows more naturally. People stay on the trail better if it is a raised boardwalk. Elevated path is easier to maintain. It would also be beneficial to build our out observation platforms similar to those you have at Rotary Park in Woodinville. If you haven't seen that, I'll tell a little bit more about that in a second. These are useful for groups to gather out of the way where they are doing nature presentations and such. As much as possible, maintain the trail at least 200 feet buffer from the river. And the idea is that this will keep it further away from the houses on the other side of the river and provide more peaceful, more natural setting. Finally, we recommend to use recycled plastic boards for construction because of its low maintenance and its greater durability. You can see this in use at the Rotary Community Club in Woodinville by Woodinville High School, and compare that to what we have here at the Bothell Landing and that wooden one, which is not in good shape. So finally, I'll say that I'll encourage you to take a moment and go for a walk with Freddie the Basset. As he walked on the trail there in the Rotary Community Park. And unfortunately, I only found out about this last night, so I didn't get a chance to share with you the links to it, but there's a 90-second video and a longer video that Freddie the Basset showcases that park and how that could probably be implemented here. And I'll show you the links here. I'll read it. It's bit.ly/Freddie Walk Short and bit.ly/Freddie Walk Long, and Freddie with a Y. Thank you all.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Andre Turner.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and city members or city council members of the city of Bothell. My name is Andre Turner, and I reside on the coastal lands of the Salish Sea, of Salish Indians, and it all planned out, and here we go. It always works that way for me. I always over-prepare. I attended Cascadia College in 2018, got my sustainability degree, and in 2020, I got my master's in urban environmental education. I'm here to advocate for improving Alternative 4. And I'm also a board member of One Bothell. Alternative 4, and that's by adding some more wetlands. It would create a more biodiverse community for our aquatic life, and we would also gain the benefit of a better habitat for the aquatic life and reduce sediment that goes into the main channel. This would also create rearing habitat for coho, kokanee, and chinook, which are endangered species, and which would also get grant funding for to help reduce the cost. The wetlands will improve water quality and our climate resilience, for which funding is also available. The wetland area would help provide space for education and stewardship for our community members. And I just want to say, in 2018, I went to Cascadia College, and I had great interaction with the City of Bothell Police Department, so thank you. They were great. It was great being with them and talking to them. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Ann Agard, and she is on the line virtually, so I'm going to panel her in. Ann, can you hear me?
Thank you. My name is Ann Agard. I live at 16524 104th Avenue Northeast. I support all of the previous four speakers, David Bain, Whitney, and Andrew, in asking for suggested modifications and the suggested additions that Whitney has provided to you in writing before. I want to also express my appreciation for the stormwater staff, Janet Gear and Christy Cox and others. They have done an excellent job with both the survey and with the public virtual presentation and open house on November the 17th when they explained the four alternatives and very well answered the questions that we had and did a follow-up with a YouTube video where you could listen to the presentation again, and it was excellent. During that presentation, they pointed out that they would need to probably apply for at least 3 grants. And so my comments echo all the previous speakers, that you will have a much stronger and more competitive ability to get these large grants if you do the suggested modifications to alternative 4, such as rerouting the regional trail outside of the Sammamish River's 200-foot riparian buffer and removing the current footbridges with the wide elevated boardwalk style bridges. And then, as they also suggested, incorporating this floodplain from another alternative, adding greater habitat complexity to the banks of the Sammamish River, and adding more woody debris to the Sammamish and extending the riparian buffer into the passive use area along the left bank of Waynita Creek to 200 feet. So I don't think that it will endanger the getting of the grants by taking the time to do these modifications and additions before the grants are filed. It's a very good time to file for grants that are enhancing salmon habitat, because of the federal grants that we're getting in the state that will help augment many of the other grant abilities that we have through the RCO and the surfboard and the PSAR projects. So I urge you to do just a few modifications to what is already an excellent presentation. Thank you. Oh, one other thing I want to add is there's an incorrect link that is on the agenda. So in order to tap into the link to apply to reach this presentation, I had to go back to an old agenda that was forwarded by Robin, but you cannot use the one on the agenda package.
Thank you, Ann. Mayor, that's all I have for this evening, but I do see that we have a few folks in the attendee list online. So if you wish to speak in public comment, please use the raise hand feature now. I also see we have a few folks in the audience here in the chambers. So if there's anyone in the chambers who'd like to speak, please raise your hand. And no takers.
Thank you so much. Next up is projected agenda discussion. Does anybody on council have an item they wish to discuss? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Zorns and a second from Councilmember Dodd to approve the consent agenda. City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns.
Yes.
Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Councilmember Alderks.
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil.
Yes, yes.
Councilmember Mankey.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Yes, soon.
Passes 7-0.
Give him time. All right, in that case, moving on to Agenda Bill 22173, consideration of an ordinance adopting the final 2023-2024 budget. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the City Council. We've been on a journey together, and actually this journey started even before I had joined you here in the organization, and I know for some of you who are members of the Capital Facilities Plan Committee, kicked off in May having conversations that carried through the summer, and then we've been having discussions related to the building towards this meeting in terms of adopting a budget since September at the City Council level. Tonight, before you is the opportunity to approve the budget, and it will then move from being the preliminary budget presented from the city manager to the adopted budget of the city council. The agenda bill before you tonight highlights some of the, again, the themes and the goals that we've been trying to accomplish together. And as we've worked through this, the budget, essentially, again, it's a plan. It's a fiscal plan that we have the opportunity to amend and change. And I've been really emphasizing the theme of it being a foundational budget where we do know there will be other opportunities that come along. And there's a lot of unknowns in our world, so we're gonna proceed that way. Within it, again, in the agenda bill, you'll also see some highlighted areas of where there have been changes to what was published in the preliminary budget back in October, as well as a couple of minor changes in terms of there is some funding that was held over from the previous cycle that went in as a proposal, and that's been backed out of the police budget, as well as a change in methodology in terms of how an apparatus in public works would be spread across our different funds. Before you tonight, then, is the budget ordinance that would reflect the investments that we've been discussing over the last several meetings. You'll see, too, that ordinance lays out things like what are the positions that are being funded. It also lays out what our projected revenues and expenditures are, and you'll note that within those projected expenditures, there are some things of where the way that we do finance and that we look at things like those capital projects that are long-term, we do build up reserves in different areas. We do have some levy funds, and not often are the projects that we're doing that are the big projects out in the community things that we pay for all at once. And so you'll see reflected in there too of expenditures that are covering some of those things that we've been planning for, as well as the ability to, again, catch up on some of our asset replacement. So again, none of this it should be new. It's what we've been talking about. And again, it's really trying to have a balance of what are the operational needs moving forward to keep the level of service going that the community of Bothell has communicated to us and been receiving, as well as some additional areas of being able to support the community. And I hope that within the budget totally that you can all see a reflection of what you've communicated to us as staff, of what you're hearing from the community as well. I want to just, before I turn it over for any last questions or comments, I want to just highlight again this concept of this budget being foundational. So when I talk about that, there's really two levels, and one of them is that, and this is a spending plan that I know that we are going to be doing work together. I think it was 87 days I had as an employee to put this budget together. We're going to continue to work together and look at what are things that the council hopes to accomplish. And again, by adopting a budget tonight doesn't mean that this is it, that these are the only things that we can do. These are the discussions that we'll continue to have as a council and as we look at priorities and we look at opportunities going forward. So I look forward to that. There's something to build from. But I hope also what's communicated as well, we will probably never have a budget process quite like this one. Again, in my tenure at least, we will keep getting better. But the foundational piece that I really want to emphasize is, I hope that was reflected is staff's responsiveness to the areas that the council is looking for. Again, our willingness to then respond to questions, highlight those answers. We've been publishing them in the agendas to really make sure that everyone who's following along has the information that's been presented in summary form and can go back and watch meetings as well if that's what they choose to do. But also just the openness and transparency of the processes as we've laid this out, of the organization puts together a recommendation based on tremendous leadership of the individuals with us tonight and some online of our executive leadership team. And as they're leading their teams, that comes to the city manager, and I give you my best recommendation. And then ultimately, you get to add, change, adapt, and take a look at and make this be the budget for the community. And we can do that work together. So that foundation is one that no matter what the process is or the timelines or anything else, I hope that you're getting a sense of we can do this work together, and that's what makes it the most effective. So I thank you for all the questions that you've had. I thank you for the input that you provided that have really helped shape this document, and I look forward to doing the work in the coming 2 years. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Somebody has to go first. Councilmember Zorns.
Okay. Well, it's comments. I want to thank you and all of staff for hearing the community and the council while keeping us grounded in, as my favorite interim city manager said, the care and feeding of city essentials. Having that reality check has been very much appreciated. I also want to thank our fire chief isn't here, but when I first came on city council, and we were kind of freaking out over how tight the budget was going to be, and there was a request to replace a vehicle, not one that pumps water, but a fire vehicle. And my question was, can we get any more life out of it? And the fire chief was very gracious and said, yeah, we can. We can put it on hold and we can get some more life out of this vehicle. And I appreciate that, not anticipating how costs were going to escalate. But I appreciate that we're placing a priority on our asset replacement. You can't kick a flat can down the road very well. So thank you to everyone. And if I was in the classroom, I'm going to be supporting this budget. I would be asking for a drum roll, and everybody would, do that at their desk. Yes, but I won't do that here. But I do have 3 words. Let's do this. It's a good plan.
Councilmember Dodd.
I was helping count the words for the side conversation, but thank you very much, everybody who's worked on this budget. I got to experience it as part of the Capital Facilities Commission. There's a lot of words in that. When I was on the Planning Commission and now on council, and it's just been a great collaborative work. I feel like a lot of our different priorities are in there while, as Councilmember Zorn said, also keeping us grounded. So thank you very much. And let's do this as 3 words, Rami.
Have you ever only said 3 words in your entire life? Because I don't think I have either. Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. The thing that I'm most grateful about this budget is that we started with a solid foundation of maintaining and investing in the future. In a very practical way that is good when you're working with city government. But we also took some bold innovation steps and our steps towards bold innovation, and I really do appreciate that. And it is a testament to you, City Manager Stanner, to come in and pull it out the way you have and make this happen. So thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to approving this budget tonight.
You've been so quiet, Councilmember Mankey. I feel like we need to hear something.
I just want to say thank you to staff for pulling this together, especially the city manager. In the short period that you were here, this was an incredibly smooth budget process. From a council perspective, we are looking to pass this tonight, early December, not going late into the year to last minute. So I just very much appreciate seeing asset replacement being funded more so than in the past. I appreciate the investments that we're making in the community, things in the CFP plan. I also was part of the committee, and there's a lot of great things in there, foundational things that we're going to start building on, and I'm really looking forward to passing this tonight. So I just wanted to say thank you to staff, all staff, for all the work that you've done in putting this together.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to echo the comments that have come before. And I just wanted to say thank you for ensuring that we know it's a plan and there's a theme and it's going to change. Having sat through a few budget cycles previously, I can tell you this one felt good going through the process. It's not perfect. We're not going to get everything we want. We're going to have tough decisions to make in the future, but it's a good starting point. And I'm glad that we were able to go through it with you. I'm glad you came in at the right time to help us go through that together as a young council. And I look forward to what we're going to do over the next couple of years together to better our community. So thank you. And that goes for all the staff as well, for all the hard work and dedication you put in. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. By the way, Google's, it's undecided whether it's one or two words. So see. Thank you. I know I agree. It's a foundational doc, and we do need this, and we do need to get started. But to your point, I'm paraphrasing. It's a living document that we will get to as we learn more next year. We are going to amend it and change and modify things to accommodate the situation at the time. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for walking us through this. To Councilmember McNeil's, I mean, it's the first council budget cycle, but I personally have been through a lot of budgets in other areas, but this is a very smooth. Thank you for walking us through it. It's a very hefty document, a lot of data, a lot of information. And we'll continue improving it, the process that is as we go, especially the front end of it, which is the priorities, and the strategy, how we get to it. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Ted and Gretchen. Special thanks, Ted, especially sitting here, is very patient with us as we ask all those questions. I'm being cautiously optimistic, as always. And the rest of the finance staff, thank you all for doing this work. And I don't know if it's just the two of you are the finance staff or there's more. So I hope there's a little more. Thank you, city staff, everybody who worked on this. I really appreciate it, going through the details, answering the questions in the details, in the detailed fashion that you did. So I very much appreciate the process. It was a relatively, quote unquote, fun aspect of things. So. Thank you.
Turn. I mean, thanks to everyone. Like, this process was really good compared to experiences I've had in the past. Thanks to everybody up here on the dais. But most of all, Kyle, thank you. You led this process and interfaced primarily between us and council. The accessibility to information was always there. I believe, I can't speak for all of us, but I certainly felt listened to and heard throughout the entire process, and the tenor and tone of the conversation has been really collaborative, and that's been really encouraging to me. So thank you. And don't say anything, because if you did, you'd probably just try to spread all the credit around, because that's what you do, and that's good. But I just want to say thank you. There's probably something that every single person up here on the dais and everybody on the ELT would like to be in here. As Councilmember McNeil said, I don't think this is a perfect budget, but we don't live in a perfect context. And it feels like we did this together. And that sounds super cheesy when I say it out loud. It sounded less cheesy in my mind, but it's been really encouraging, and I've really enjoyed that part of the process. A couple things I'm going to highlight. I'm excited that this is a grown-up budget. We're funding asset replacement that we haven't done in the past. We're eating our vegetables, as it were. Our reserves are in good shape. As somebody who really likes shiny things, I actually really appreciate the fact that we're doing the things that we haven't been in a position to do in the past, and we're taking care of those things before we go after shiny things. Although we've got some shiny things in here too. I'm pumped that we're funding public safety, not just in police and fire, but also funding, is it RCRA? Is that what we're calling radar now? Okay, Racer I'm not going to say that. I'm being positive tonight, Rami. And human services funding at levels we haven't seen before in Bothell. And that is just really exciting to be able to give that to our community. And everybody probably knows by now that I'm super excited that Parks has assets to replace, a lot of them that are behind schedule, and we can actually do it now and we're getting them some help for maintenance in the summer, and I am really pumped about that capital position. Cannot wait to see what that person does, because we've heard over and over again how important parks are to the community, and I'm really excited to have somebody to help do some of the projects that we've had a backlog on for quite some time. That's about all of the grandstanding that I have tonight. Councilmember Mankey?
I motion to approve the ordinance adopting the final 2023-2024 budget.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion on the floor from Councilmember Mankey to approve the budget and a second from Councilmember Zorns. Would anybody like to speak to the motion any more than they already have? City Clerk?
Okay, Councilmember Zorns,
Yes.
Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Alders,
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. How easy was that? All right, next up, we have Agenda Bill 22174, approval of preferred design alternative for the Sammamish River Waynita Creek Restoration Project. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. And as we've heard from public comment tonight, we know that there are a number of people interested in this topic, and we're coming off the heels of a month-long virtual open house too, which I really appreciate. Tonight we are joined online by Janet Gear, who is our surface water supervising engineer, as our presenter. She also has friends here to help too. So I believe we have a consultant online to field some questions, as well as you'll see in the room here, we do have staff from Parks to answer any other questions or add in some information. And our very capable Public Works Director, Aaron Lenhart, is also here to answer any questions as well. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Janet. Looks like she has her slides up. And Janet, thanks for being with us tonight. I know you're not 100%, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I've got the cold that's going around, so I'm going to do my best, and let me know if you can't hear me. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Thank you for allowing us again to present our project alternatives for your consideration. As you know, we've been working since 2019 to complete important aspects of this salmon habitat project effort. August through October, input was captured during stakeholder outreach, and 4 design alternatives were created, evaluated, and compared to identify a preferred alternative. In November, we conducted 6 stakeholder briefings, a month-long open house, and a virtual community meeting to review all the alternatives created and gather input on the preferred alternative. Tonight, we're asking Council to review the information and select a preferred alternative to move forward in the design process. The goal of the project is to select a preferred alternative design that will improve habitat and rearing opportunities for salmon, while also providing cold water refuge from warm in-stream temperatures during salmon migration. In total, 4 alternatives were developed by mixing and matching restoration elements together. Each of these alternatives present a great improvement for salmon habitat, but one must be selected in order to move forward in the design process. So this is alternative 1. With alternative 1, there are 3 restoration elements: restoring vegetation in riparian areas, daylighting of the 2 tributaries to Waynita Creek, and limited restoration of Waynita Creek, including placement of large woody debris and streambed sediment to improve surface water and groundwater exchange. All invasive species would be removed during restoration. And though the native plants have not yet been chosen, the goal would be to provide a forested corridor between the Sammamish River and the upslope areas off-site. Alternative 2 builds on alternative 1 by creating all of those elements and then exploring what a side channel for the Sammamish River could look like. The placement and length of the side channel mimics how a side channel could look if naturally formed based on the curvature of the Sammamish River stream bed. Alternative 3 builds on Alternative 1 again by exploring what a widening of the Waynita Creek confluence with the Sammamish River could look like. By adding multiple channels, it provides more opportunity for off-channel habitat along the Sammamish River during high flows. And during low flows, at least one of the channels would have flow year-round. Alternative 4 combines the elements of all three previous alternatives by containing all the alternatives from 1 and 3, and then it adds an alcove channel to provide additional connection along the Sammamish River, which is similar to Alternative 2. The alcove channel would be designed to contain flows year-round, with opportunities for floodwaters from the Sammamish River to backfill during high flows, and by providing additional refuge for salmon. So selecting the preferred alternative. To identify the preferred alternative, staff and the consultant team developed a criteria matrix based on project goals and values. Each alternative was scored using this matrix with a value of 0 to 3 applied to each criteria. A score of 0 indicated a fatal flaw. A score of 1 was the least desirable, and 3 was the most desirable. Half points were also allowed. The recommendation for the preferred alternative was the preferred alternative with the highest score. So, Alternative 1. This option removes all invasive plant species and restores native plants within the stream and wetland buffers. It has some minimal sloping to improve stream bank conditions on Waynita Creek. The estimated cost to construct is about $3.2 million, assuming construction starts in 2025 and based on the current level of conceptual design. The positive points in this are that the scope of construction activities are relatively narrow, so they would likely be constructed in less than 2 years, and it has the least amount of grading, so it's the lowest cost option. The existing pedestrian bridges and trail corridor would not be touched under this scenario. With the lowest amount of complexity, it would also come with the lowest amount of short and long-term maintenance. The negatives are that it is the least amount of in-stream improvements and habitat creation along Waynita Creek and the Sammamish River. So it will score the lowest for grant funding and will provide the least amount of habitat for salmon and other species. Alternative 2. This option removes all invasive plants again and restores natives within the stream and wetland buffers, as well as adds side channel reconnection to the Sammamish River. The conservative estimate to construct is about $8.2 million, assuming, again, construction starts in 2025. The positive points are that it provides a high amount of potential habitat and floodplain reconnection. The negatives of this are that the complexity of the project itself and the location of the groundwater on site will require a great deal of excavation of up to over 16 to 20 feet in some locations, which will increase the possibility of failure. It will likely result in warming of Waynita Creek because the Sammamish River will come in rather than providing the cold water refuge from Waynita, as we've seen in the side channel project just upstream, and will likely result in continued costs to Parks and Recreation Department over time for adaptive management and long-term maintenance. The grading would also cut into the reserve passive use area and fragment the trail. The lower pedestrian bridge would have to be relocated or replaced with a longer bridge in this alternative. This would likely take more than 3 years to construct due to the complexity and the extensive grading on site. The impacts to the reserved passive use area, the bridge location, and the cost are potential fatal flaws noted within the social and financial categories of the criteria matrix scoring. Alternative 4. Alternative 3. This alternative also removes all invasive plants and restores natives within the stream and wetland buffers, as well as adds a multi-thread channel connection to the Sammamish River at the Waynita Creek confluence. It would require a moderate amount of grading for the widening confluence relative to the other alternatives. The estimated cost to construct is about $6.2 million. The positives of this are that all channels of the multi-thread system would contain flow during high flow, and during low flows, at least one channel at the lowest elevation would carry the flows, allowing for a high amount of habitat and floodplain reconnection. The start of the multi-thread channels would be downstream of the lower pedestrian bridge, so the lower bridge would not need to be removed or replaced in this scenario. The option could be phased to allow for channelization when parks planning is complete. Large woody material structures and beaver dam analogs would be used to fill in hard points of the channels to encourage threading instead of combining to a single channel in the future. This alternative will likely take about 2 years to construct. The negatives are that this option is almost double the cost of the alternative one, and the long-term maintenance is higher than alternative one. Alternative 4. This alternative removes all invasive plants and restores native plants within the stream and wetland buffers again, as well as adds the multi-thread channel connection and an alcove channel adjacent to the Sammamish River. It would require a moderate amount of grading relative to the other alternatives. The estimated cost to construct is about $6.4 million. The positives are that all the channels of the multi-thread system would contain flow again during high flows, and that single channel during low flows would carry the potential available stream channel with the alcove will include more floodplain reconnection than it will in alternative 3. The start of the multi-thread channels would be downstream again of the pedestrian bridge, so the lower pedestrian bridge would not need to be removed or replaced in this scenario. This option could also be phased to allow for more channelization when the park's planning is complete. Large woody debris and beaver dam analogs would be used to fix hard points of the channel to encourage threading instead of combining to a single channel in the future. This alternative will still likely take about 2 years to construct. The negatives are that this option is double the cost of alternative 1. The alcove, there are concerns that it could be filled in with sediment over time, and the grading might affect the buffer area, and the long-term maintenance is higher than alternative 1. Alternative 4 scored slightly higher overall and was therefore selected as the preferred alternative to carry forward at this point. Here you can see the full picture of how each alternative scoring was compared. You can see that alternative 4 scored slightly higher than alternative 3. We took these alternatives back to the stakeholder groups and the larger community for comment. We had 6 briefings, which included over 40 stakeholders and subject matter experts. We also had 40 members attend the virtual community meeting. Many of those folks were also from the stakeholder groups. We had 46 community members respond to the online survey, and several responses were sent to staff and city council for consideration. So looking at the responses we received during the 1-month outreach, most agreed with alternative 4 with possible modifications based on data and permitting. Many are also interested in maximizing habitat for salmon and other species. Some concerns regarding cost relative to benefit were addressed, and they included why would we do anything besides alternative 1, and then items such as like the alcove channel. There were some concerns about functionality. There are also concerns with maintenance and continued ability for human interaction and long-term management needs of the site. We also received several responses that were outside of the project scope of work. These included regional trail and bridge locations. Several comments expressed concern around existing bridge locations. Many would like to have the regional trail end at the passive use area, and some would like the trail moved to extend riparian buffers to 200 feet along the Sammamish River. There was also a lot of interest in an elevated walkway, and our beaver experts asked that any bridges or walkways be set higher than we normally would to allow for water to move freely throughout the system. There was some comments about passive use area, moving the trails and extending the stream buffers, and the passive use options. There was a lot of questions about how they could utilize the passive use areas for things like kayaking, gardening, sports, etc. And then a few questions about future use of the parks as a whole. So to address the park-specific questions, I'm going to defer this slide to Aaron Milner so that he can discuss the Parks and Recreation project timelines.
Yes, thank you, Janet. We know that there's a lot of community interest in what becomes of the former Wayne Golf Course. As you all know, we have several parks projects in the queue and many opportunities to engage through open houses, study sessions, and action items for consideration in this next biennium. Just to touch on a few of these projects that are coming up here. In 2023, we plan to engage with King County on the Regional Trail Connector project using $1.25 million worth of King County levy dollars in building regional trail connections in the area. We also have the demolition projects of the clubhouse, the caretaker house, outbuildings and structures, as well as a major bridge repair project on the front nine, which is also scheduled in 2023. In 2024, we'll look to engage our community, our Parks and Recreation Board, our City Council, to create an overall vision of the park through the master plan process. We've also set aside some operational money in our now adopted budget to add a park, to marry a parks naming project with this master plan effort also in 2024. So all these efforts will help define what the big picture is for this property, what grant opportunities exist, and the sequence of steps needed to achieve our community vision for these properties. Turn it back to Janet.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so project next steps. This project effort is scoped to not affect the park planning process as much as possible. So again, we're not building any of the trails nor replacing any of the bridges under these scenarios. In order for staff to move forward with the project, we will need to begin preliminary design and permitting to determine what can be included in this important effort, and then to begin seeking grant funding for construction. Therefore, we request council consider approval of alternative 4 and allow staff flexibility to alter and change to the design based on the hydraulic analysis, the data that we will receive, and our permitting requirements. If approved, staff will move this project through preliminary design and will bring the design back to council for final design and construction approval in 2024. And with that, we thank you so much for your time, and we'll open it for any questions you may have.
Councilmember Alders.
Hi, Janet. Thank you so much for this presentation and for walking us through it, especially the scoring slides are really helpful. Can you go back to the last slide in the presentation, please? So I wanted to ask a question about, just to get some more clarity and understanding on, almost there. Oh, you're going from the beginning. Sorry. Just to get some more clarification on what next steps can be and what kind of, one back. There we go. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sorry, it's moving faster on my end.
Oh, I'm sure, right? Okay, so when you mention flexibility, I know that that's what a lot of the community is calling for, is how, the question is how much flexibility is built into alternative 4, how much flexibility can we have in the beginning design approval process, and like where are those opportunities for incorporating stakeholder feedback? Because I think that's the biggest question that we will probably all have here, is because we've heard some really excellent feedback from our community, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the feedback we're hearing is actually coming from experts in their field. That we have very highly educated, highly trained, highly skilled members of our community who live here and who are contributing this feedback. And so I want to value it and make sure that they know that they are heard and valued for their contributions. So with that, how much flexibility do we have?
Absolutely. So,
thank you.
You know, I would go back to, this is 10% design, so we don't have any of the data, you know, to back up what will function well under the existing site conditions. And so things like that we've mentioned, we could add more floodplain reconnection. We could definitely ask to add large woody debris along the Sammamish River. There's a lot of other elements that we can pursue. We just don't want to promise anything because that area is a navigable water. And so we need to make sure that we are coordinating with FEMA and Army Corps and other folks, which we will be doing actively to see what can be placed on site. The other element, for example, UW Bothell professors had some concern about the side channel as well, based on what we've seen just upstream. And they also had concerns about the alcove because, you know, it could be filled in with sedimentation that could be quickly blocked off by beaver activity, which we know is, upstream and downstream of this location. There's a lot of variables in there. And then the additional $200,000, they wanted us to do a cost benefit analysis of, would that be worth it? We feel very strongly that the braided channel allows for the most flexibility for the system to function on site and allows for the most ability for it to still provide a high amount of habitat. And so that's why we were asking with Alternative 4, it can allow us to pursue multiple different options based on the data we get back and provide something that we have a high confidence level that will be successful on site. We completely agree and acknowledge that there are very intelligent people in our community that are very active and care very much about this location. And so we'll continue to work with them. We just need to make sure that we get the data first to tell folks what can and can't be done on site. Rose, I do want to mention too, Rose, who has joined us this evening, is our consultant from Jacobs as the project manager. And the cost estimates that we've given you are for the scope that we've provided. So any changes to the scope will of course, change the cost. And we completely understand if you wanted to defer this later. That's why I was mentioning the 2025 construction, because those estimates will go up each year that we delay, and they will alter based on the changes on site. So it would just be understanding that Alternative 4 might not be 6.4 million if we add additional elements into the design. Rose, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure. Specific to the cost estimates, we found what was really driving it was grading. As Janet mentioned, the groundwater levels are pretty far down. And so if we were to do elements like more floodplain reconnection, or I heard some of the public comment about preferring the side channel, that would increase cost depending on the amount, somewhere between Alternative 4 and Alternative 2, the side channel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I really appreciate, Rose, you being here and just making sure that our that we're keeping our expectations realistic. And so I'm wondering if I could just share some preferences that I have based on my understanding of the science and the restoration opportunities that we have. That doesn't take into account what you guys know behind the scenes. So please tell me, thoughts and feedback is welcome. One of the aspects that I really appreciated about Alternative 2 was where the trail ended. It basically ended at the back of the orchard, which is that number 10 on the map that is outside the scope of the project. That instead of trying to put the trail, and if you're doing pictures, oh great, thank you. Put the trail near the waterway, then we're impeding upon that riparian zone. And so I actually like the idea of ending that trail between the 5 and the 3 right there on this slide. Because that means that gives us opportunities when we get to, number 10 on this map to connect the trail in a different, through that area instead of having to go around that area. And I do like, my understanding is Alternative 2 does replace the bridge, correct?
It would require removal of the bridge, and we would not replace it.
Okay. How does it looks like there's a bridge that connects to the trail that goes through.
That was put into the conceptual design to show folks that that's the portion that would have to be built. So that is not in the cost estimate, and it would change the type of permit that we would be able to apply for. And so would that then, getting the trail there, be a future project? It just out of the scope of this project, and it would be something that we could do in the future? I'm trying to understand how it all kind of connects. Again, because this project is not building any of the trails or the bridges, they're outside the scope and aren't considered. Aaron and Nick, do you want to speak to when that might occur?
So as Aaron mentioned earlier, we'll be working with King County starting in 2023 to look at that regional trail project. King County is slated to be the lead agency on that, But I do believe that they're open to, talking about where the trail goes. Originally, it was negotiated by city staff in King County as we were purchasing the property, and there were some unknowns as to what was happening out there. So one of the stated goals of the regional trail is that it also helps enhance the work that we're doing with the salmon habitat restoration. So I do believe that King County would be very open to that conversation. However, we've not had it yet, and that will be coming in 2023.
That's really helpful. And thank you for helping me see that it's sort of like a phased part. There's phases to the project. We're not trying to make it all everything we want it to be in this one shot. And so I would look forward to having those conversations with King County when we're there. And so, but beyond that, I prefer the braiding of alternative 4, and I'm interested in making sure that we have that 200-foot buffer for the river in the riparian zone. I've gone out there and planted trees with Whale Scout. It's a family activity that we do, and I'm really excited to be able to continue participating in these projects. From the dais, but also getting my boots wet. So thank you very much for this and for hearing my thoughts, and I look forward to hearing my fellow council members' thoughts as well.
Councilmember Zorn.
Okay, so I'm feeling really guilty, Janet, because I have notes all over my agenda bill here, and I'm going to give you whiplash. It's an unfair thing to do to somebody who's sick and recovering. So my apologies to
Fire away.
Okay. You've done Bothell. I have a question from three groups. I assume Bothell has learned from experience on what to do and what not to do in restoring stream channels. So I appreciate your comment on what they were concerned about. Was there anything else that stands out? Otherwise, I'm going to ask you about 2 other groups.
A couple of things I thought were great were they're very interested in continuing to partner with us on this, and so we'd be bringing the design back to them so that we could continue the conversation. I'm trying to think of anything specific. They really just wanted to help with the monitoring aspects beforehand and during construction and afterwards to help us adaptively manage the project on site. And then they were very interested in other species in addition to salmon. So as you know, when you provide the habitat, you're also providing opportunity for a variety of other species, and they have staff that we're looking at opportunities for different avian species and other mammals that would utilize the space. And so they were going to help us to include additional items that may not increase the cost, but will provide additional high habitat.
Like for amphibians, like frogs and salamanders and that kind of thing. Very, very cool. Yeah, just as long as they don't want to plant salix in there and become a major crow attraction, because those guys drop fecal matter to beat the band and do not want to do that. And then Raya 8, because I'm on Raya 8, I've had a conversation with Jason, but it was just in passing about what their vision was for this. And it seemed like that this area is more of a kind of help the salmon recharge before they continue, more of that focus, before they continue on upstream and cooling. And so when we talk about woody debris and that kind of thing, they're all important pieces for cooling. Did they have any other observations or concerns about this?
When we met with the technical committee, they were just, really telling us to, look at the data and then look at the opportunities for floodplain reconnection. So for the funding opportunities as well. So where can we coordinate with the cooperative watershed funding? We actually got more input from UW on, the specific items they'd like to see. Okay. And Raya 8 was really focused on success of the project and then ability to seek funding that would be appropriate. They did mention that with PSAR funding, this is a pretty low year coming up. I should say with surfboard funding, and then the following year with PSAR, there'd be a little bit more funding, but that we'd probably get a total of $2 million from them. And so we'd have to be looking for additional sources in order to be successful.
Okay. Boy, I was going to ask you a follow-up question. That thought's gone, which is probably a merciful thing. And then did any tribal groups weigh in?
Not yet. And again, we will actively seek their input during preliminary design, because we really have to have something solid for them to look at and to comment on, of what they'd like to see. And so our plan was during the preliminary design phase to reach out to them. A lot of times they are directly involved with us and Army Corps at the same time. And so it's really an active conversation with Army Corps during the permitting process.
Okay. I remember what my question was. Did Raya 8 weigh in on a favorite alternative?
They said they liked alternative 4, but again, we're looking at the data for what would be successful.
Right. And funding is no small detail. So, okay. I'm going on to my next questions. Flipping a page, that's a good sign. I love that the goal is to have a forested corridor. And you're saying things, and I need to apologize to everyone in the back. You all had great input, and I really treasure it. And if I forget an important piece, I'm asking for your forgiveness now. But the woody debris is something that we can add later on, correct?
Yes, definitely.
Is it, because it's something that I'm really cognizant of, with not a stormwater background, but, having played in a few mud puddles, water goes where water wants to go. And the slough is 9 feet lower than it used to be?
Yes, that's correct.
And there's, I think Rose made the comment that groundwater is pretty far down. So what does that mean when we have stormwater events? Does that mean there's going to be a higher erosion and sediment? What do we anticipate happening when we let the water go free here?
So a couple of things. One, the groundwater level is low by the Sammamish, and it gets shallower as we move upstream in Waynita Creek. And so that's why a lot of those elements have us connecting with the cooler waters along Waynita Creek. With stormwater, obviously you're going to have more flashiness, and so there'll be, higher flows. But again, we haven't done the analysis to see yet how much, that would, and it would absolutely affect the design, but we would take a look at all of that as part of the preliminary design process. And Rose, do you have anything that you would want to mention?
Yes, so reforesting the whole corridor will also help with stormwater, because providing dense native vegetation helps slow down stormwater and provide opportunity for it to actually sink into the ground.
Right.
And then the other opportunity that we haven't talked as much about is we're not going to remove wetlands as much as possible. Like, there might be situations where the wetlands will intersect with the new or moved channels, but the wetlands also provide great opportunity to slow down water and trap it so it has a chance to sink into the ground before flowing out.
Okay, so here's a question. In theory, could stormwater carve out any of these channels? Stormwater, major events, could that, give us an idea of where those side channels would be most likely to have success over time?
Right, so there's always the opportunity for stormwater to erode channels, but part of the design process is to create grading adjacent to the stream channels so that the floodplain can also help capture water. So part of the process is trying to minimize that and create room for stormwater to carve out those channels where we want it to go.
Perfect, okay, good. And then also there is a point about the bridges creating choke points for our busy little beavers. As darling as they are, they can complicate things. The bridge is a priority for us to put into our plans, like a wider bridge, if we're making that channel wider, or am I putting words in your mouth?
So I would say we've been talking with folks from UW and then Beavers Northwest to manage for the beavers on site. And so the bridge is a constriction point, that lower one especially. And so what we would do is put in elements that would detract from them building along that bridge and then make it attractive upstream. And so we would purposely put in areas where we would want them to be and discourage them where we wouldn't want them to be. But absolutely, if the bridge wasn't there, that would open it up a great deal.
Okay, so does the plan option 4 lend itself well to that, in your opinion?
So right now, the bridge would remain in place under alternative 4, but we could phase. What we've talked with Rose about is we could offer a phased option. So whatever the planning process ends up with, we could provide. This would be phase 1, and then we could provide additional braided channel sections that could be installed if it were to be removed, expanded, depending on what is determined by the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay, so is that something that we can include in our decision tonight, is to ask that be a piece of this with the option that if we were to choose option 4, that would be a goal that we would be moving towards?
So if you were to ask us to remove the bridge, I would defer that to Parks and Recreation. And so Nick and Aaron, I would defer to you on this one.
Yeah, so we recognize that there's an opportunity, and we just haven't done any work on it.
Okay.
Because of, the position that we're talking about to do some of our capital work was just approved. We will be working with King County. We'll be trying to identify opportunities, in particular as they're related to those bridges. But as of right now, there's no money set aside for that. So we would have to come up with a plan. Again, I do believe there's some opportunity to work with the county. They recognize that they want to see success out here as much as we do.
Okay.
So
County's the key player here. Okay. And thank you, everyone, for your patience here. I promise I'm almost done here. Let's see. I get really twitchy every time we talk about getting closer than 100 feet towards shoreline. So I would support 100 to 200 feet buffer there on the shore with the shoreline. I do have a question for our police chief, though. Do you worry, everything, it's another piece for Bothell, but this is we're not going to want lights here. We'd like dark along these stream areas. Do you worry about mischief when we create a wider buffer, it being an attractive place for mischief, and does it just become one more thing to just kind of keep an eye on, or is there something we should be mindful of when we're in this conversation?
Open spaces can be challenging to police. It's challenging to police it now. We have some plans in the work to expand our bicycle patrol down there, which I think would be helpful. We have e-bikes that get around down there fairly well. It's really a staffing thing, and our staffing's getting up to speed. I'm not worried about it now.
Perfect, good. You're not worried, I'm not worried. I am going to just pretend I'm not looking at anything else and yield the floor to the rest of council members. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all for this. Thank you, Janet, for the presentation. I just have a question about the process, and please pardon my ignorance. So we are at 10% design. We've determined number of the time, we determine a scope, we determine the time, and we determine the cost of this project. But then there are suggestions, but the design is only at 10%. So how could we come to a time estimate and a cost estimate at such a low level of design? Because there are other, requirements, so to speak, requirements and suggestions being made, and we're saying, sorry, it's out of scope. But how do you know what the scope is if it's at such a low level design, amount of design? Yeah, still.
Right. So when we say it's outside of the scope, it's outside of the scope that was in the cost estimate and the timing. And so we look at elements of this is, because this is what the consultants do. And so they have a good idea of what might be successful on site based on some of the preliminary data that we have, topographic survey, wetland delineations, the groundwater data on site, that type of thing. And so they're using that data to come up with a plan. And then based on those elements that are created within the plan, we have a cost estimate. So like Rose mentioned, it'll be like excavating the amount of soil and how much that costs for a removal and hauling and all of the aspects that go along with that. And so it's a preliminary cost, and as you said, any of the changes that we make to it will change potentially the timeline and the cost, so we'd have to come back when we have a better idea of what would go forward. Rose, I'm going to let you speak to the elements that were specific to these 4 cost alternatives.
Sure. So the cost estimates, as mentioned, because it is 10%, we made assumptions. And if any of you had a chance to look at the cost estimate basis of estimate, we go into a lot of detail about the assumptions made. So things like how much grading we think would need in floodplain and stream channel areas based on where groundwater is at, things like how much square footage is remaining to be vegetated, based on experience for mobilization and demobilization, all those sorts of things go into these cost estimates. And then the other factor of safety, while not 100% guarantee, is because we are at 10% design, there is some built-in cost to acknowledge that prices could increase by 2025, or there might be elements that we're unsure of. So there is a little bit of buffer built into the cost estimate, but as we saw in the last 2 to 3 years, that's not necessarily a guarantee of anything. So it's kind of a balanced. We did our best. It is 10%, and we'll continue to update as best we can as the process moves forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. The other thing I noticed, Janet, is that you deferred to the Parks Department on some questions. Like, what is your scope? What is the park scope? From, when we talk about, the bridges or the trails, it sounds like there's a collaboration even outside of just the city of Bothell and consultants. I mean, we need to talk about a regional approach to this. So what is your scope versus, parks versus others?
Right. So we were tasked with looking at the salmon habitat element of the project, but we're trying not to affect things that are outside of the salmon habitat. For example, the master planning process of the park, the existing regional trail locations, those types of things, and understanding that that's a parks function and not a storm and surface water function. And so ours is specific to just the salmon habitat only. Nick, do you have anything that you might add to clarify?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about the regional trail project, and I just want to be clear on what that is. So in the 2020 through 2025 Parks Levy, there was $2 million that was set aside for trail connections to, the regional trails in the area in this park, specifically for this park. $750,000 of that was used as a match to purchase 5 parcels upland on the back 9. It's called Piper's Crest, and that will be coming back to you in 2023 as a transfer agreement from King County to add to the parklands there at the former Wayne Golf Course. So that leaves $1.25 million. The agreement as it reads is that King County is the lead agency on establishing those regional trails. And that's not meant to sort of connect the front 9 to the back 9, What that's meant to do is connect to the regional trails. That would be the Sammamish River Trail, the Tolt Pipeline Trail, things like that. That's what they're looking at and trying to see what those opportunities are. When we originally negotiated where that trail was going to kind of land, it was just based on the best information that we had at the time. So, as we look forward and some of those conversations that we have with King County, I do think, again, there's opportunities to talk about bridges and connections and, what that might look like. And certainly, as we look forward in the 2024 master planning of that park, to look at all those passive areas, the trails and all the other things, that visioning process for what the park's going to become, that's going to be a great opportunity as well for everyone to weigh in and really make that ultimate decision on what is the former Wayne Golf Course going to be.
Thank you. So so the trail, I understand the suggestion. The bridge, say a boardwalk was a suggestion. If we decide at some point, we're not going to do it now, but we want to do it later. If the work, can it be done later? I guess if we do not consider it right now.
I think anything can be done later. I've talked a little bit to Janet about this. There's certain things that we could do now. We're going to, try to line up some of these projects. But you can always go back and do additional work above and beyond what you've already completed. So things like elevated trails, that would be a part of a discussion that we likely would have during our master planning process. We'll also pose the question, though, to King County as we're talking about the regional trail and see if there's an opportunity there as well.
Cool. So I just want to make sure that, because there's a bunch of work going to be done in the next 2 years. 3 years, 20, assuming everything stays the same, we don't find anything with no surprises. But then in midpoint, we say we want to add a bunch of boardwalks or connect a trail or move a trail or whatever. That's not going to cause a redo of the work that we spent already 2 years to do. Right?
No, any work that we do out here will complement the work that's already been completed.
Cool. Thank you.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I hope I can hold my voice in excitement because I am definitely excited about this opportunity. It's been a long journey to get us to this point, but to have the opportunity not only to do restoration, but bring grant dollars into our community is an amazing opportunity. And so for me, it's the piece that I resonate the most with is the flexibility. Future flexibility. We don't want to lock ourselves up to one specific thing and not be able to do something in the future. And so I appreciate your being proactive with that, with the parks piece. As far as, bridges and things like that, we definitely want to look at opportunities, make sure that we're looking, we're not causing downstream issues with beavers, things like that. But as we're having this conversation, a lot of things come to mind, and that is not just our little piece, but the entire river, what we're doing along the entire river. And if we can bring back up 1, 2, 3, or 4 options, having this kind of a site plan, mapping plan for me to look at this is a telling story. And what would be nice is when we look at our portion is to also be able to look at other portions up and down. Because we're going to come in and do this project, but what effect is it going to have up or down? Right? Those are some of the things that come to my mind, that if somebody doesn't do something downstream or somebody does something upstream, how will it affect us in our project, the money that we're putting into this area? And what I mean by that is, what is the long-term maintenance and who takes care of the maintenance on this project that we're about to embark on? Is there funding available if we have to redo stuff? I mean, maybe that question for Janet, but.
Right. So the Parks and Recreation Department would be responsible for the long-term maintenance of the site. So what we can usually include in grant dollars is the amount of required maintenance and monitoring associated with the permitting process. And that's typically 5 to 10 years, depending on what is agreed. And then after that, it would go back to Parks and Recreation for any long-term maintenance. It's hard to get grant dollars for maintenance because it's an ongoing activity and you're using a single fund. So we typically are not successful in those. And a lot of the granting agencies are interested in funding the project, but not super interested in funding the maintenance. And so that's where we would be having a lot of partnerships and where I would defer to Nick on the Parks and Recreation Department for the maintenance requirements long term. As far as the regional projects up and downstream, you're absolutely correct. And that's one of the reasons why we're working with the King County Flood Control District and Army Corps and several of the folks that have got a shared interest in the Sammamish River corridor, as well as working with the upstream and downstream jurisdictions. And so there's a big planning process that's going on, and we're going to try to insert this project into that longer term planning process. It's already on the RIA 8 plan for the Sammamish River corridor, but making sure that this is a piece of the regional effort and that we've got other projects that have been slated within the RIA 8 region, and we'll be putting those forward for King County and the Army Corps operations and maintenance plan consideration. And then Nick, I would defer to you on the maintenance question.
Yeah, I would just say that to add what you were talking about, that 3 to 5 years does buy us a lot of time to plan for what that future maintenance might look like. So that's really key to this project, and it's key to many other projects that we do out there. You know, once we complete the project, there's usually mitigation that goes with that. So to the extent that the grants can pay for that first 3 to 5 years, that's super helpful for us as we plan our work moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. And then it appears in this option, alternative 3 here, there's a couple set aside areas for parks. Looks like 4 and 10 are the set aside. Is there any other areas that would be accessible by the general public besides the trail?
Well, I think
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think upland you would have some up on the hillside. You'd have some trails.
Okay. And then you spoke about the grant that was available for the trail connections through the park. And I believe you mentioned that it could be the toll pipeline, or it could be the Sammamish River Trail. It could be any trail that connects, is a connector to this front or back 9. Is that correct?
I believe the intent of the appropriation of $2 million was for trail connections to the regional trails that exist. So yes, it could be front 9, it could be back 9, but the idea would be that it would connect to the Sammamish River Trail or the Tolt Pipeline Trail, which are the two that sort of intersect this property.
Okay, so it's not connecting the front and the back necessarily. It's just trail connections throughout the park. Is that?
That is correct.
Is that correctly? Okay. And then the other thing that comes to mind when we talk about the options or alternatives for the back, we're specifically talking about the back. Hopefully we get to a conversation about the front at some point. The master plan comes to mind, which is a big community involvement piece, which we do potentially have the opportunity to allow it to fund some of the maintenance and ongoing things that we're going to need to do to maintain the park. It's, I was educated by you when we first saved the park. We go out, we're gung-ho to do all these things, but the one thing I didn't think about as a community member before I got on council was we have to maintain that. And so current state, we're not really maintaining it. It's just natural, right? And the community's out able to enjoy it. But as we do projects on it, what is that going to look like long-term for us? We talk about assets and replacement of all these things. So when we talk about adding these things into our parks budget, what is it going to take, and how do we ensure that we have the money to continue to have these assets available to us?
Yeah, that's definitely the challenge, and Janet mentioned it. There's typically not a lot of money for maintenance out there. So one of the original ideas was we have the 4 acres on the front 9 where the current clubhouse sits, and the idea was to create some sort of private-public partnership that would help fund the maintenance, the overall maintenance of the property. Most of the property is passive use only. That means trails, picnic areas, things like that. You could do elevated walkways, stuff like that, but you can't put active use recreation on most of the property. A lot of it has conservation easements over it, so it will not allow for that. So that, I mean, those will be challenges, but again, when you have a trail, it's a little bit different than maintaining a high-level active use park. So I think there's time to plan for that and to really, think that process through as we move forward with our master planning efforts.
Thank you for that, Nick. So yeah, I'm encouraged by the conversation, having the opportunity to have, these 4 alternatives brought forward. I will tell you that I was so impressed with the way you laid out the data, that hopefully we can do that same layout in the future for other items, but it was clear and concise on why. The 4, I think it was 3 or 4 topics. It was the environmental, the financial, the social, and the technical. If you touch on each one of those things, they touch a different portion of our community, right? So there's environmental in our community, there's a financial, fiscal responsibility, there's a social impact, and there's a technical piece of it. So to see it in that format was very helpful for me to understand how you came up with a recommendation that you did. And having the stakeholders at the table to help make that recommendation, hearing that University of UW Bothell and WIRA 8 were involved in those conversations. One Bothell, Whale Scouts, all the other community members, the experts that we have were part of that. I look forward to continuing the conversation and ensuring that any future project that we do has that same level of community involvement throughout our community. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for all your hard work and bringing these recommendations forward.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. So thank you for the presentation and all the work. I really appreciate it. I'm going to tell you straight up front, shoreline restoration and such is not my area of expertise, so please bear with me. I was able to meet with some members of the community, and we've heard from a lot of people and a lot of really well-credentialed experts. So it's been great to get so many just knowledgeable people writing in about this. And I had kind of a list of things that I was concerned about, and I was able to check a lot of those off during the presentation, which is amazing. So just to be super clear, so that I don't think about it later when the meeting's over. So talking about boardwalks, talking about making the bridges, getting ones that are higher or wider, and talking about making sure that trail is 200 feet from the shoreline. Those are parts of the regional trail conversation, and that's not this project. We can't do anything about that tonight.
It's both a part of the regional trail conversation and the master planning efforts.
Okay. So I just want to make sure, because those are the things I didn't cross off, and it sounds like we will talk about them another time. So, cool. Then thank you. That's all.
Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you. I think a lot of the questions I had have already been answered, but one question about the lower bridge. If we were to remove that, does that cut off the eastern part of the park from the western part of the park, except for access through Blythe?
Now, there's currently 2 bridges that span the Waynita Creek, so there's an upper bridge right now which would provide access to that area.
But if the element 2 is daylighted, is there still a way across that new daylighted tributary, or would that cut off the access from the upper bridge?
So once we have installed this, it would cut off access because of the 2 tributaries coming in. And be under the current conservation easement, we cannot establish new trails. And so that's why what you're seeing here are the existing trails on site. And so that would be the only consideration as we move forward. If you were to just have that upper, you would not necessarily have connection to both sides.
Okay, great. I was just out there yesterday walking in the snow and didn't realize there was a tributary flowing underneath my feet there. I came back and I looked at the map again and I was like, oh, that's awesome. It's going to be daylighted. So thanks for that, the answer to that question. One thing I noticed from the packet was that the goal is to really improve habitat and rearing opportunities for salmon while also providing cold water refuge from warm in-stream temperatures during migration. And I think 4 does that. I love hearing from the community, the public comment, the desire for more and asking for more. That really resonates with me. And I know the community is always going to challenge us to do better. And I hope they continue to come and share those things and ask us to do that, because I think that's very important. In terms of the additional elements that are being requested, is there additional grant funding that we could go after to cover some of those things? And if so, what's the likelihood that we would receive those? And would we do those in parallel with, if we're to move forward with alternative 4, could we do that in parallel and add those things in, even though we're going to 30% design from 10% design?
So I would say in the design process, we can absolutely add those elements in. For the construction itself, what we're currently looking at 3 pots of funding. One is the stream flow restoration grants, because there's 2 current water rights on this site. It makes us a really good candidate for that funding. We're also looking at the salmon habitat from PSAR and the surfboard. And so that'll be one portion of it. And then that third element that we were talking about is the cooperative watershed funding, and that's with the King County Flood District. And so those 3 elements, we feel pretty confident that we can get to alternative, 3 or 4 level at this point, based on conversations with them. The additional elements, we can definitely look for additional grant funding. It's just that I don't want to promise something that we can't necessarily deliver. And then each time we go for a grant, they all have some type of requirement or constraint. And so, for example, in the past, when we've applied for grant funding, there was some that was recreation and some that was conservation. And so while you've got a grant that requires recreation, you had another one that wouldn't allow for it. And so we just have to be very careful and strategic about what the requirements are and then what we're using as a match. And so the reason we were talking about going for more than 3 grants, it tends to get very difficult with finance and just making sure that we are adequately, having the funding go forward for auditing purposes. We are audited by the state each year and need to make sure that that's abundantly clear. And then the staffing resources. So it's quite a big effort to manage that many grants at once. And so I would say we could go for it, but I would defer to Nick and Aaron whether you think that's a reasonable request.
Yeah, I guess I would speak to the park side, which is typically, if we're looking for grant funding opportunities for park amenities, we really do need to have a master plan in place. That's sort of that foundational piece before we go in front of any of our funding agencies to say, here's our plan, here's kind of the community engagement that we've already completed out here. And that kind of, just starts that process, makes us more competitive for some very competitive grants in the parks world. So.
Great. I think that makes sense. I think that's all the questions that I have. Appreciate the extra information too about the trails and the master planning. I think, I'm looking forward to those things coming before us and the community engagement with those things. It's always a fun planning process and getting to realize what you want this piece of property that we've been holding for so long to be and how we can best use it in combination with preserving nature and preserving the things that we bought it for. So thank you.
This is my turn. I lost track. Thank you for your presentation, Janet. I'm looking down there. You probably see me from up there, so I'm just going to wave in the opposite direction. It seems like the cost of these is directly proportional to habitat restoration quality, correct?
I would say that actually with 3 and 4, they provide a high amount of habitat. And so I think those 2 options are very comparable to the amount of habitat creation on site.
Okay. And I think you mentioned earlier that the habitat restoration obviously helps us score better in terms of grants, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess what I'm getting at, so I don't just ask a bunch of vague questions, the members of our community made a pretty good case as to why some of those elements, and we're only at 10% design, and it almost feels like we're giving up on some of those before we even try at 10% design. Is there a reason we wouldn't include some of those elements? Because certainly, if this is like any other project, as grants come in and design moves farther down the road, we can obviously add or subtract from there. So I guess my question would be, why not ask for everything?
Right. So what I had mentioned with the request to have like additional woody debris in the Sammamish River, for example, and those types of elements, it wasn't until we went out and showed the alternatives that we received that feedback. And so we just didn't have enough time to add those into the design at this point because that would affect cost. And again, that will all come out of the next phase when we can look at the preliminary design, look at the actual data, and then talk with the permitting agencies about what would be desired and allowed under the site conditions. And so again, those elements, we've written that down. Those are comments that have been well received, and we'll definitely look at those when we go forward into the preliminary design process. As far as the specific side channel element, again, we'll be looking at information for the alcove. The only reason that we were talking about the side channel being less desirable is because based on the groundwater on site and the site conditions themselves, it doesn't lend itself to a side channel very well. And so if that comes out in the data, you know, we can definitely look at making those adjustments. But our biggest concern is that, again, that the project upstream, when we attempted to put in a side channel, does reach lethal levels in the summertime and did not properly intercept groundwater on site. And so just wanting to make sure that we adaptively manage this based on what we've got upstream, just to make sure that we don't have a project that's not successful. And so that's why we were mentioning with the 10% design, this is, you know, again, there's a long way to go. We can certainly look at those elements and including those elements, but just don't want to lead people down a path that we likely won't be able to go down, if that makes sense. Rose, did you have anything you wanted to add to that point?
I think you covered a great part of it. I do want to reiterate again, the grading piece, grading costs a lot. And so while we are absolutely happy to follow any direction to look at more floodplain connection, or if we're directed to look at the side channel, just make sure you're aware that it would increase cost by quite a bit.
Okay. In terms of the trail and that 200-foot riparian buffer, would it require a significant amount of grading at that area also to have something other than a trail there? Because what I'm getting at is, I don't want to sacrifice salmon restoration habitat for a trail or a bridge that was designed to carry golfers over, or a trail that hasn't been built yet. Like, I feel like we should optimize for salmon habitat restoration, and then we can figure out the trail from there. Like, all the rest of it can sort itself out. And it seems like we're assuming that trail is going to be there and designing around it.
So the original scope was to assume, because of the easement on site for the regional trail, that it would be there. But again, because we're not building it, all we're saying with the lines that you're seeing there is that we wouldn't plant or restore that area. If it comes back within the next year or so that you know, we want to remove that whole trail system, we can add that into the design. It'll just be an additional design cost for us to remove that element, but we could definitely do that. The other thing that Nick had mentioned too is through the master planning process, if they determine they want to, you know, stop it at the passive use area or those types of elements. Again, we're not building the trail, and so we can make those adjustments as long as they're prior to us, you know, going forward with the actual construction of the project. But again, because we're not building the trail, in the future, you could, you know, replant that area. There's a lot of elements that we could put into place within another phase of the project if needed.
If the future trail wasn't a factor, would this option, alternative 4, look different?
If the trail wasn't there, it would, let's see. So we'd still be replanting within the stream and wetland buffer areas. We would still be designing this. If the bridge wasn't there, that would likely be wider, you know, at that section. And certainly there'd be a lot more planting and restoration within that buffer. So it would look different at that point. But again, because we're in preliminary design, that's something that can be added in the future.
I am but one of 7 up here, but frankly, I'd like to make those changes now. I would prefer that we design around the best possible alternative for salmon. And considering we haven't even, I mean, we're starting conversations next year about the trail, I don't want to design around a trail that we haven't planned or a bridge that we didn't put in there. that would be my guidance, and I'm speaking last, so nobody's going to agree with me because they don't have the opportunity, but I guess I just don't understand why we would sacrifice salmon habitat restoration for those things right now.
Right, and and Aaron and Nick, feel free to chime in on this, but I see a couple of options, so then we can bring this back at a later date. We could move forward with this with the understanding that we could remove those elements, as we go forward, and you are allowed to do the King County coordination and regional trail planning in addition to the master planning process. Or we could understand that those elements are being removed now and designed for them not to be there at this point. But I would defer to Aaron and Nick as the best way forward.
Yeah, again, we still need to have these conversations. So, we're here tonight getting feedback. We're hearing from the community. I think there's some opportunities to discuss with King County and to see what that might look like. And at a later date, we'll be bringing that back to you to consider what you'd like to do.
Perfect. Those changes that Janet mentioned about a wider channel if the bridge wasn't there and more planting in the riparian zone, those are very much changes I would like to see when it comes back. Let me look at my list. I think I covered everything. Janet, thank you for your time. Everybody else, thank you for your time. Oh. Councilmember McNeil, do we need a motion on this one?
Yeah, I was going to move the recommended action to approve the preferred alternative 4 to move to preliminary design.
Second.
I am hesitating because I'm considering making an amending motion. Is Paul here somewhere? There's Paul, up at the front. Thanks, Rami. Rami's like, yeah, where he always is. If I were to want to make an amending motion, number one, can I do that? I don't normally make the motions.
Yes.
Okay. And I will ask this question. What would it muck up if I made an amending motion to proceed with design as if the trail and bridge were not there? Well, that's not a question for you, Paul.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
You're asking the
Like, is that, I mean, I guess what's the next step on this? Is this something that we are hoping to be done on tonight for now? And would this be adding an extra step, or is like, help me out.
This is a great time to make those types of changes. And so we would just direct our consultants that when we're moving to remove those sections. But again, I would defer to Nick and Aaron because you haven't had a chance to have those conversations fully yet. And so if we design to remove it, you can't really go back. If you design for it to be there and you choose to move it, you can make those adjustments in the future.
So to remove it, you would be cutting off access to Blythe Park and to those regional connections. That said, we can delay that conversation with the county. We can, look for an opportunity to maybe discuss that in the next Parks Levy, which will be coming up in 2025. What those opportunities might look like. But to be clear, that bridge it exists today, and so to remove it without having a connection means that you've essentially cut off your trail connection.
Was there not a second bridge? I thought a second bridge was mentioned earlier.
There is a second bridge, but as the schematic showed, that will be limited to that upper area, and it will allow for, unless we have an additional bridge at number 2.
Okay.
It won't allow to cross over into that passive use area number 4.
So through part of the conversation with the county, and I don't know if there's enough money available for it or not, as that trail goes, like we're going to have a conversation about what that would look like in terms of getting the trail connected. Would there be an opportunity to talk about a wider bridge at that point in time?
Well, as a part of any conversation about a regional trail system, that we definitely could bring that subject up and see what those opportunities were. As I mentioned, there's no money set aside right now specifically tied to the bridges. The money that was put aside in the 2020 through 2025 King County Parks Levy was really for regional trail connections. So there's some nuances there, but again, that's just part of that conversation that we still need to have.
I guess what I don't want to happen is I don't want us to assume the bridge and lose an opportunity to widen that and improve the salmon habitat when there would be a solution upcoming for a different bridge down the road with the county anyway. Like I feel like that's a missed opportunity potentially.
I agree with you. It's a solution, but it's not one that we've investigated, so we don't know. I mean, it's an opportunity, perhaps, maybe is the better word, just because we don't know what kind of commitment that might, entail. We don't know if the county would be interested in adding that to their next levy that will be coming out in 2025. There's just a lot of unknowns. So while it's an opportunity, one that we can look into, I like Janet said earlier, I can't make any promises as to whether or not that would make the cut at the end of the day.
And if you did, I wouldn't trust you.
If I may help a little bit
Please.
too, or just add to the confusion. As Janet mentioned earlier, there also is the option to do a phase 2 on the habitat restoration down the road. So we could do this particular project now, and then once we figure out what the trails and the master plan are going to be for the back 9, we could come back and do a later project that would expand upon the work that is proposed to be done this round. So another option, option 72.
Perfect. And Janet, you mentioned something in answering my question, that if we keep the bridge now, it's a fairly simple option to remove it down the road later in the process. Simpler to remove it later in the process than it would be to add something back in.
Right, exactly. And so from the permitting side alone, it's easier to expand or improve an existing bridge than it is to try to permit a new one. And then from the habitat restoration standpoint, we can certainly remove the bridge when we go to construction if that's what's determined in the 2024 effort. But if you don't have the mechanism in place to put something back, again, that can be problematic for you. But as Aaron said, we can phase the approach so that the bridge stays under this scenario. And then when you have the funding to upsize the bridge, we can add additional braided channels, expand the size, the bank full width of Waynita Creek. There's improvements that you could make once the bridge is redesigned. If you do intend to put a new bridge there, otherwise, I don't know, but maybe you're removing it.
Okay. When we start those conversations up with the county, can we have conversations around what it would look like to put a different bridge there?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Yes.
Just
procedurally,
because there's a motion and a second on the floor, this is usually the time for discussion. And so
all right. I'm ready to make an amending motion. I would like to amend the motion to include proceeding with design as if the trail would terminate at the passive use area and not be in the riparian buffer.
Second. Or third.
I'm going to go with Councilmember Alders. So we've got a motion on the floor that I moved and a second from Councilmember Alders. Any discussion on the amending motion?
Okay, so yes, I'm not clear about what your amending motion is, because it sounds like you're burning a bridge, and what I heard from staff is we can't burn a bridge and rebuild it later on.
So all I moved was to terminate, so in one of the options, I don't remember which, it terminates, the trail does, on this side of the bridge, there we go, at the passive use area. So after the conversation, I decided not to include the bridge in my motion. I'm only including the trail. So the one that's in front of you right now, 5, or between 5 and 3. So basically taking the trail out of the riparian zone for design and not touching the bridge right now. And they're going to ask about potentially a bridge over a wider channel in their discussions with the county.
Okay, so clarifying question from staff. Would that allow us to move the trail further west? Away from the stream edge and give it that 200-foot buffer? Is that the consequence that you're looking for?
Yeah, so when I asked Janet if the trail being placed there was affecting the salmon habitat restoration, she says yes, they would plant more trees, they would do more things to repair the habitat, and I want to do those things there.
But the effect is more than 100-foot setback is what you're going for, but it would not preclude moving the trail somewhere else through the passive use. Yes, no?
I didn't specify a number on that because I don't remember what the numbers are, to be completely frank. I want to do salmon habitat restoration as well as possible and figure out where to put the trail after that.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I don't want to be ending the trail and effectively not allowing the trail to move somewhere else to move pedestrian traffic. Do we still have that flexibility?
So jumping in on this one, so if you stop it at the passive use area, you can just decide where you'd like it to be in the future. But it would likely then have to go through the passive use area if it exists, simply because once we plant and restore that section that was currently shown, I don't know, I'd have to look at the conservation easement language, but I don't know that we could put the trail there. And if you did, there'd be a lot of mitigation associated with it because you'd have to remove all of the plantings and the restoration that was there on site.
But we could put it like right on the border of the passive use area, couldn't we?
You could, and I will say from, the sloping of where it is, so let me show you. So it running where it is existing right now, the slope there isn't ideal. And so when you're going through the master planning process, it might be determined that that's not a great place for the trail. And so, you could certainly stop it at the passive use area and determine that as part of the master plan. Or you can leave it in its existing location. And then if you guys choose to not put it in there on site, we can restore that at a later date. Nick, am I speaking correctly to your master planning process there?
Yes.
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I appreciate your amending motion because it may seem like a very long time ago now, but that was one of the comments that I made early on in my comments about what I would prefer. Is exactly, I think, your logic, which is keeping the trail away from the riparian buffer area and providing us the opportunity to terminate it at the passive use. So that gives us opportunities in the future when we go to plan what is on number 10 here on the diagram, that we would have the opportunity to put the path in a place that makes more sense, that doesn't interfere with salmon habitat. So I'm supporting your motion for that reason.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zorns, were you done with your discussion items? Because I feel like you kind of didn't have a chance to finish your response.
Thank you. I would like to support it, but what I'm hearing from staff is that we still have some flexibility of not including that trail, but it's not a known on whether there's a great deal of reservation on whether or not we could put that trail through passive use. And since that's an unknown, I don't want to take out my options. So and also the argument that it's a steep area and it probably doesn't lend itself to moving somewhere else, I can appreciate. So it ends up being a moot point. But as long as we can keep our options open.
Well, I guess the point is our options down the road our option would be to do the habitat restoration now or not. And if we kept it there, we would lose that opportunity to do it as part of this process. And we could certainly do that again at some point in time in the future. We could even down the road just move those lines just a little bit and put them right on the edge on the inside of the passive use area, have them be just about in exactly the same place, but be able to do more salmon habitat restoration now would be the point I would make. We're probably way outside of Robert's rules right now. Sorry, Paul.
I believe we're still discussing the amending motion, and that's okay.
Okay, I'll take it from you. Any other discussion on the motion? Councilmember McNeil?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will not be supporting the amending motion. And the reason is I think we've heard from staff that moving forward with the original recommended action leaves us flexibility to do the things that we potentially may want to do in the future, which I do support potentially moving the trail and changing bridges and doing those things. I've heard from the community, but I've also heard from staff that we need to do some more studies. We need to make sure that the project that we do put forward is not going to have an impact down the road. And one of the things that I've heard loud and clear from the Parks Director is that there's a discussion that needs to be had with King County for dollars, grant dollars that could potentially come. And what I don't want to do is isolate those grant dollars and cut them off without having that discussion with the county. I think it's important we have that discussion. But I don't want to get lost tonight that by making a decision to move forward with the recommended action, not the amending motion, that we lose those opportunities, because your suggestion is good. But again, we're not talking about us doing design up here. We're talking about going through a preliminary design opportunity. And I think by the recommended action moving forward, not the amending motion, we would have a better opportunity to make those changes after not only hearing from staff, but the community as well, and going through a more robust design discussion. So I will not be supporting the amending motion, not that I don't support some of the changes, I just cannot support it at this time by cutting off the potential trail communication with the county in the future.
Councilmember Mankey?
Thank you. I support the larger buffer. I think we should really look at that. The trail where it currently sits, though, it's a difficult thing. If we were to remove it tonight, we would be cutting off access that's already there in an agreed upon location with the county, which I think could put us at some risk of having more difficulty negotiating with them in the future. I also think we haven't discussed it with our community about this change, so the community would be losing access and connection through the park. It's a big thing. It's not something that I take lightly, and we're likely to see people just tromping through Section 10 and creating their own path, which I don't know if that's a legal issue or not. Wearing a new path, an official and approved path through passive parkland, but I have concerns about that, which we have not discussed at all. We have not sought legal counsel on that. So knowing that we can go back and we can move the trail later and we can replant this section and give the buffer at a later date after we've done our diligence and we've done all the right things and lined up things that we need to, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable. So tonight I will not be supporting the amending motion, although I do support the reasons behind it and the work that needs to be done there. I would like to see that in the future, but in terms of the motion tonight, I will not be supporting.
City Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And typically don't get involved a couple layers deep, but one of the things that I just wanted to note, my concern from an operational standpoint here is that I feel like we're starting to dive past the policy layer and into some design specifics. And what I'm hearing from pretty much everyone is the desire here is to prioritize salmon restoration and salmon habitat. And there's an interest in making sure that we keep flexibility, that we don't make decisions early. And what I'm wondering is in the spirit of where this motion, the alternate motion is going, is there an opportunity to really instead emphasize those two things and giving direction to staff of, as they continue to work on this, let's look at ways to, again, put salmon restoration and habitat first, and then be looking at that flexibility. And I don't, again, Janet, the technical expert. I will not try and put it in any more precise words than that. But the spirit of what I'm hearing is that, and where I am concerned is by moving forward tonight that we may be getting a little too operational without enough information. And so trying to find a way of being able to get to a decision tonight to keep things on schedule. The alternative would be is potentially to, and again, we have an amended motion on the table, so we would have to walk some of this back too, but also of looking at, is it a situation where you'd like staff to look at some of the consequences of this and maybe even bringing it back next week with a little more time and information about consequences. So those are a couple of things that are coming to my mind as I'm hearing this, again, of absolutely wanting to honor where there is the policy direction for sure of we want to make this about restoration, and we're hearing that. So those are my 2 cents.
I would love to have a conversation and have this come back next week with the idea that, I mean, because the trail lines that are there, they're just like lines drawn on a map, right? Like that's just conceptual. We haven't talked to the county or formalized any of that, correct?
Actually, the trail was negotiated with the county as an easement. And I would just say that we likely will not be able to gather the correct people in the room in this week timeframe.
Okay. Is there, and again, this might be too operational, and I guess, Kyle, I like your suggestion. I just wasn't sure. I want to maximize salmon habitat restoration, and this one sacrifices salmon habitat restoration for trail placement. However we can make that better, I am totally open to ideas. And I fully admit that I am probably like the 14th ranked person in this room to decide how to do that.
So just jumping in, one of the things that we had planned to bring the final report back in January, but we were slated to come in January, I believe the 17th, to discuss this again. And so if, that would give enough time, Nick and Aaron, to gather the feedback, we can do that. We can also defer the project. I would say that we've got to at least complete the final report because we are under grant requirements to create a conceptual design. But we aren't under grant requirements to move to the preferred alternative. So that's another option. If you wanted to wait for this other planning process, that's something that we could do. However, it will increase the costs. Anytime we have to delay it, it's going to increase the cost estimates.
I guess I don't understand how, if we're already planning on coming back in January anyway, and we're able to do this before then, I guess I don't understand the delay.
So if we determined a preferred alternative tonight, the consultants then can make all the changes that are needed, create the final reports, and allow us to, button up the preferred alternative so that we can begin moving to the preliminary design process. If we don't have one tonight, that's fine. It just delays until the January conversation if we were to select a preferred alternative again to move forward in the process itself. So it just pushes back the timeline each time we have a delay. But that's certainly something that can be done.
When you say make the necessary changes as part of that process that happens after a preferred alternative, what kind of changes are you referring to?
So the preferred alternative, we have to complete all the reporting that goes along with it and package it up for the grant. And then we're going to move forward into the preliminary design phase. And so a lot of those both will run concurrent with each other with the consultants. And so if we don't select a preferred alternative, we can't complete the final reporting. We can't move any of that forward for the preliminary design phase. And so it's just causing a delay each time that we don't select a preferred alternative.
Is there a way to select a preferred alternative tonight and accomplish the ideals or goals that I've outlined within that time frame?
So we can select the preferred, for example, if we were to select preferred alternative 4, but allow staff the flexibility to make changes, then we can move forward with preliminary design studies. And so, for example, they're going to have to go through the hydraulic analysis. We're going to have to do rows, there's going to be a lot of data that we're going to be collecting in order for us to move forward. And so I don't know if you want to speak to any of the other analysis, but regardless of whether the trail is there or not, we still need to complete the hydraulic analysis, the full topographic, more detailed surveys. What else is included in that, Rose, that would be able to move forward if we selected the alternative?
We would be able to go out and do tree inventory based on refined construction footprint. And also adding to caution that because the hydraulic analysis relies on having an actual channel design, it's kind of an iterative process. If we were to get direction to change stream channel design later on, the hydraulic modeling would likely need to be rerun.
Is there a way that we can approve this tonight with direction saying the next time that you come back, bring us an option for the things that I've brought up?
Mayor, I think
Like a potential edit? Like
I think what I would suggest is zooming it back up into the motion of, again, all of this conversation can be contemplated. I think if you looked at the preferred alternative, and then again, it's with a directing staff, as Janet said, around the flexibility with the direction of prioritizing salmon habitat restoration and maintaining flexibility of options for the council to consider additional alternatives. I think that there's language in there that I think particularly with putting the emphasis on the salmon habitat restoration of prioritizing that.
So is that would that be a motion or would that just be direction?
That would just be direction.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to then give that direction, and I will withdraw my motion.
Can you do that?
Can I do that?
Yes.
Perfect. I guess I just withdrew my motion. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion, the main motion that's on the floor?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. This is very helpful and informational. I agree we were going too much into the weeds. We need to step out, but it's good to have the conversation. I am looking forward to having this another discussion here in a month. Seems like a month and some change to talk about the next steps. I also understand that there's a process that we need to follow in order to achieve some milestones. So I get that. So I will. This sounds really good. I will support this motion.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to say, thank you for the dialogue, the conversation. I think, as the city manager alluded to, salmon habitat restoration is near and dear to all of us, not just here in Bothell, but in our region, in our country for that matter. And so to me, just having this conversation is great, having flexibility, being proactive and ensuring that we have the information that we need to have to make sure that we can move to the next step of the master planning is important. I think listening to the community and hearing from them has helped stem this conversation a little bit further along. And most importantly, I want to say thank you to Janet for being that expert on the phone, on the Zoom call here to guide us, and Nick for the parks information and making sure that we know that there's decisions we can make later, but the decision we make tonight could affect those conversations. So I just wanted to say thank you for giving us the information so we can make a good decision tonight. Look forward to continuing to have the conversations to make sure that we use the land the way it should be used, not only for restoration but for the community at large. So thank you.
Councilmember Alders.
I just want to, reiterate the request for prioritizing salmon habitat, and that to find a way forward with an alternative, but with also guidance to the people who are doing the design, both Rose and Janet. Thank you, and thank you for your patience as we figure out our way through this. But I am hearing from council, and I also lend my voice to a desire to to prioritize salmon habitat as we move forward in the design process. So thank you very much.
All right, City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. It is 9:03 right now. We are going to take a break until 9:15.
Recording stopped.
All right, welcome back to the Bothell City Council meeting. After that scintillating discussion around salmon habitat restoration, we are moving on to Agenda Bill 22175, consideration of a cured-in-place pipe installation agreement with Alderwood Water and Wastewater District. City Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And we are ready and have Boyd Benson here with us tonight. And one thing we learned from budget conversations is Boyd and presentation about pipes is always the right thing. So Boyd, I'm going to turn it over to you for any further introductions and to guide us through the discussion.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we'll be providing some information about the proposed cure-in-place pipe installation agreement with Alderwood Water and Wastewater District. No action is being requested of Council tonight, and we'll bring this back at a future meeting for consideration of approval. So what I'd like to do is just give you a brief understanding of where we've been, where we're at, and where we'd like to go. So the Valhalla Utility Project was included in the 2021-2027 Capital Facilities Plan. Back in 2020. In 2021-2022, we started feasibility and design. We're currently at 90% design. This project includes water main replacement, sewer rehabilitation, and some stormwater improvements. Third quarter of this year, you approved the current 2023-2029 Capital Facilities Plan. We've broken up the Valhalla Utility Project now into S13 and S14. S13 is the neighborhood improvements. S14 is a tight line bypass, and I'll show you an image of this pretty quick. Down Waynita, Project S3 was added in, and it's an annual cure-in-place pipe program to rebuild sewer lines. Tonight, we have a brief study session, and we'd like to get comment and questions from council, and then we will propose to bring this back in December, later in December for consideration for approval. Alderwood, in a separate action, obviously, is bringing this to their board as well. And then first quarter 2023, Alderwood will bring the cure-in-place pipe agreement for, or the project work for bid and award, and we do the installation work in third quarter 2023. So real quick, what is cure-in-place pipe? It's a technology that was developed in the early 70s. It's been getting better and better year by year. It's a trenchless rehabilitation method. Instead of digging up the roadway, you insert resin-impregnated fabric sock through one maintenance hole to the next maintenance hole. You just pull it in. You get it to conform to the surface of the pipe, and you cure it. It used to be with steam or hot water. Now it's UV light. And what you end up with is, the image on the lower right is, let's say, a substandard damaged or disconnected sewer main that now has a new liner that provides both hydraulic improvements, strength, and the rest. One of the big reasons we're looking at this in Valhalla is there's quite a bit of inflow and infiltration, and what that means is groundwater is entering into these older concrete segmented pipes. And the goal is to reduce that, to reduce impact on our lift stations and wastewater treatment, and ultimately wastewater nutrient discharge to Puget Sound. It also helps address root intrusion and the rest from roots coming in between the pipes. A bit more about cure-in-place pipe. The image on the upper right is kind of a schematic showing what typically occurs. You block the sewer flow from the upstream maintenance hole, you pump it around, you clean the pipe between the two maintenance holes, you pull the cure-in-place liner in, you get it to conform to the pipe, and then the lower right is an image of the UV curing process. And it makes a very strong liner, both to address the I&I and the rest of the issues, but also increases pipe strength. Just a few comparisons between open trench and cure-in-place pipe. If we were to do this type of work in Valhalla with typical construction techniques, we'd be installing a PVC pipe with about a 1/4 inch thick wall. The CIPP is about an 1/8 inch, 3 to 5 millimeters. So it's comparable because it also has a carrier pipe around it. Design life's 50 years for both. Both are anticipated to go a bit longer. Capacity for new pipe is full. Let's say an 8-inch main is full flow. Once you put a liner and you reduce the cross-sectional layer a bit, you reduce the flow, and it's by about area-wise, it's about 6%. The good news on that is these pipes don't flow full. They flow maybe a quarter to a third full, so it's not a big impact. Strength, they're both strong, meet requirements. The big ones here are going to be impacts to our citizens and time and cost. So time to install open trench, it might be 100 feet a day to put in new pipe because of the depth and the excavation work and the rest. With CIPP, you can do 500 to 1,000 feet a day. Usually it's 3 runs, at least that's what Alderwood's seen in past projects, 3 maintenance hold and maintenance hold runs. Public impacts of excavating in any neighborhood, but in Valhalla we have some steep sewers, is high. You're disrupting traffic, you're disrupting pavement, you're disrupting sewer service and the rest. With cure-in-place pipe, it's very low. There should be no surface disturbance. And are the different technologies time tested? Yes, new pipe's great. The CIPP, the UV's only been around a decade plus, so we don't have 50 years of history, but it is proven to, at least to date, to do well. And then the last one is cost. And this is a big one for the sewer utility. We try to maximize what we can do for the expense we pay. Open trench could be $400 to $800 a linear foot. The CIPP is closer to $100 to $150. And this is based not only on our estimates, but information from SPU that's been doing this a bit more. Only 2 more slides. So a bit more on the utility project before we touch on a few items on the agreement. So Valhalla, you can see the upper right image, city map or plan view of the city. You see the little orange dot, and then the blow up of the neighborhood. So within the Valhalla neighborhood, the rehabilitation with the lining are all the orange colored sewer mains. The green dashed line is a new sewer bypass. This is pretty exciting for us. The orange star is lift station 1. It was designed to only serve Valhalla, and it's had improvements over time to increase pumps, because if you look at the smaller inset map, it's draining a large basin of the city. And so that lift station's at capacity. So the cure-in-place pipe rehabilitation of the Valhalla sewer mains will improve that portion, and then the green dashed line is a gravity bypass to take the sewage that's now flowing to the lift station and bypass it right across the river for gravity flow. So we're pretty excited about that. And the reason I'm bringing that up is there's a little bit of CIPP for that. It's mostly a parallel main. While this work, if approved, occurs, we'll be doing concurrent replacement with about 4,800 or 4,700 feet of asbestos cement main will be replaced with ductile iron. The sewer bypass I mentioned, some storm spot repairs. We don't want to go back in after we do this work. And there's enough work in this neighborhood where you'll see quite a bit of pavement restoration. So financing next steps, and I guess I should talk a bit more about the agreement. This is Alderwood Water and Wastewater. I think it's now been 3, maybe 4 years where they've basically handled a contract with different jurisdictions. And what this does is gives us economy of scale. So currently for 2023, there are 6 jurisdictions: Bothell, Alderwood, Linwood, Muckleteel, Water and Wastewater, Silverdale, and Woodinville. And what that does is get a lot of work done. The bidding is very simple, and we get a really good price. The agreement's been reviewed by legal. We had some minor changes, and those have been addressed. The only other cost besides what we're committing to the contract is city inspection and the design, which is already done. It was done as part of the Valhalla utility. And then for the agreement itself, we do have adequate sewer utility funds. We actually have both S3, the annual cure-in-place pipe for $500,000, and when we looked at this earlier, when we were looking at only doing partial cure-in-place and more replacement of sewer main, we had 1.15 for the Valhalla project. So that's kind of where we're at with respect to the agreement and financing. Once again, an image. This is from Alderwood. The upper right is just a sewer main. It gets cleaned. You insert the cure-in-place liner, and you basically have a new main that lasts quite a while. Next steps is to address council comments and questions about the agreement, and then bring this back forward for consideration of approval of allowing or authorizing the city manager to enter into the agreement with Alderwood. So that's all I have for you tonight. It's pretty short and sweet.
Councilmember Zorns?
Short and sweet questions. Is this the first time we've used Alderwood for cure in place?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And then, I'm not a legal person. Are they guaranteeing this work?
There is, just like with our capital projects, there are warranties and inspection and approvals. There's material testing and the rest.
Okay.
I should say, because Aaron asked me to remind you folks, we've done this work ourselves at the city. We did quite a bit in 2019, but we didn't get the same costs that we're seing with this larger consortium. So it's time proven, and it's a good economy of scale.
Okay. Well, I having lived in a neighborhood where this happened, I really appreciated the minimal intrusion on, life for the residents. Although, sometimes our pipes were making really funny noises as things were getting sucked through the pipe system. But knowing that, knowing they were at work, it was great. And then I know that there was also a failure that they had to come back and fix. So if Alderwood's doing that, great.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for, anyway, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Well, I put those in the presentation, so you.
I appreciate that. I don't appreciate the top one. The bottom one is cool. I had a question. The scope of this agenda bill, because you had in the previous slide, I think you had a bunch of things listed.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the first bullet, or are we talking about the two bullets, including the sub-bullets in the second?
Just the top bullet.
Just the top bullet?
Yeah. The other work would be done concurrently under separate contract.
And that we'll talk about in the future then?
Future date. It's in the capital facilities plan. We're in design
cool.
now at 90%.
So I just wanted to clarify. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Mankey?
Thank you. No question, just a quick comment. Wanted to say thank you for using technology to do more with less. I think that's a great thing we can do every time we can do it. And I love that we're using the latest and greatest to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So thank you.
For sure. I just want to put a plug in. You folks with the capital facilities plan and adopting the budget, this $500,000 every biennium is going to do a lot of good for the city utility and for environmental health and wastewater treatment. So just want to say thanks.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And I echo what Councilmember Mankey said, and also just thanks for getting a really good price on the work. You said that the city had done this before, but we got a better price going through Alderwood, right? So I really appreciate that. That helps us dedicate things like the money to do this work, because it's something nobody thinks about until it is very needed. So thank you.
For sure. And I want to be real clear on this. We estimate a better price. They said to go out to bid, but the comparables they had for the last 3 years were very low. So we've put a contingency into our estimate and the rest, but we think we'll get a very, very reasonable cost.
Totally makes sense. I'm sure you're better at estimating than when we go to Costco and see how much we're going to spend. So,
Especially Rami. All right, seeing nothing else, Boyd, thanks for making utilities interesting. We appreciate it. Thanks for the work you do.
Thank you so much.
All right, moving on to Agenda Bill 22176, 2022 Board and Commission Appointments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you'll all recall, last week we were here interviewing candidates, and tonight our Deputy City Clerk, Robin Schaefer, is going to lead you through the process of hopefully selecting one person to serve on the Planning Commission and one on the Arts Commission. I will also note for anyone following along that the process that the council generally follows to do this is from the Protocol Manual, Section 2, Subsection 8. And so Robin will explain anything that needs to be done and help walk you through.
Thanks, City Manager. So Kyle stole a lot of my thunder with that little introduction, but what I will say is that this is per the protocol manual. As you know, you have ballots in front of you, and we have 2 positions to appoint. One is for the Arts Commission, one is for the Planning Commission. So I'm asking that when you cast your ballot, you vote for one on each board. And for those at home who are unaware, we've had a vacancy that we opened up for application, and we received, of course I had it written down, we received a number of applications that were interviewed. Oh, here we go, 13 candidates that applied, 2 for arts and 11 for planning, and as you know, you interviewed a majority of them at the last council meeting on the 29th. So with that, if you, oh, and the last thing to say to make sure everyone is aware, you do need to have a majority vote of council for each position in order for the appointment to be made. So if you have any questions, now's the time. All right. Jean? Yes, please cast your ballot. It's up to you. You can pass it down, and I'll tally them real quick. Oh, who's double folding?
Extra careful.
I apologize for the delay while I tally. Okay. I have tallied the votes, and for starting up with the Arts Commission position, we have Miriam Britton receiving 6 votes and Christopher Parker receiving 1 vote. Therefore, we have Miriam Britton appointed. And in the Planning Commission, we have Sharon Jones receiving 4 votes, Stephanie Lunn receiving 1 vote, and Amanda Gorley receiving 2 votes. Therefore, Sharon Jones received the majority and is appointed. So next, all I need is for someone to motion to ratify the appointments.
Councilmember Dodd.
I move to ratify the appointments.
I second.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Councilmember Alders to ratify City Council's appointments. Any discussion on the motion? I am going to just say really quick, in case anybody's watching, these are always impossible decisions, and I'm always super overwhelmed at the amount of talent that we have in here. So if you're watching and we didn't appoint you, it's not because we don't like you. Like, we like you more than you probably think we do. City Clerk?
Okay, please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, council conversations. Councilmember McNeil, is your light on because you want to speak?
I apologize, no.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Dodd.
Okay, this one's pretty quick. It's kind of low-hanging fruit. But as the newest person here, I just want to urge everybody when we're doing our like regional committees reports don't use like the acronym, say what it is, maybe say what it does. Because I guarantee you a lot of the people who are like tuning in, like especially if they're like just first curious about something and they're like, man, what the heck?
What is PSRC?
Make it accessible. So just say what it is, and it'll take like a few seconds, but I feel like people will be way better for it. So that is my thought. Thank you.
It's a great call out.
An encouragement to talk more.
Yes, Jean, please
Yes,
talk more.
yes. That's good advice. No, go, Rob.
No, you had it first.
Oh, sorry. I just have a short comment. I want to thank, we just got off of Thanksgiving. We're getting ready to go into another batch of holidays. I have a number of family members who are nurses, firefighters, police officers, and so I would like to thank our first responders, specifically in Bothell, and in our community at large, who sacrifice their holidays to keep our streets clear and safe. And it's kind of a thankless job, but it means a lot. And thank you for doing that, both in our city staff and our community at large. So thank you for Thanksgiving, and thank you for the upcoming holidays.
Deputy Mayor?
Speaking of thanks, I didn't say this earlier, but City Manager Sannert, one thing that I noticed this year is the street sweepers in the fall, or we're still the fall technically, but earlier in the fall, and snow plows. The roads in my neighborhood usually are not plowed. It takes me a few days until I can get out. So kudos to the streets team, to the public works. It's amazing work. Hearing those trucks. It's like hearing an ice cream truck in the summer. It's like you really love hearing that sound. So it's amazing. Thank you so much for the work. Okay, Amanda thinks ice cream trucks are better. Don't go to her neighborhood.
I think the deputy mayor needs to take a ride along.
Oh, one of the sweepers?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in.
Oh, yeah.
Late night snow plows. I've been seeing them out there really late at night.
I love it.
Because I enjoy walking at night when it's quiet. And yeah, every night I've been out there, I've seen a snowplow going up and checking to see, like, oh, do I have anything to do up here? Nope, it looks good, and then moving on. And that is just a level of service that I think we can all be really impressed by. Really, really appreciate how this was probably the easiest snow for my neighborhood in my memory, because, and it might have just been some part of the weather conditions, but like it didn't really like slow down life like we're used to. We're basically used to, okay, it snows, all right, it's going to be a few days before we can do anything normal again. And that wasn't the case this time. I really appreciated it. And it just says we have a good team doing good work. So thank you.
I was quiet earlier during the staff presentations because I was trying to make sure that I didn't repeat what everybody was saying, and the meeting was moving along. But I did want to just call out the chief and say thank you for seeking diverse perspectives from the community and doing that work. It's easy just to not do it, and you're making an active effort to do it. So I think that's valuable. I think it's worthwhile, and I just wanted to say thank you.
I'm going to throw out the success of the winter market and tree lighting. I hope. Well, I saw a lot of people out there, and so it was so busy that I probably missed you if you were there too. But that is that's what we can do. Like we can do cool stuff like that. The fact that and that was community led. That was not the Parks Department. Although I love what the Parks Department does. More of that, and especially how the backside of the Main Street shops, that parking area was turned into a market too. I don't think I ever in my wildest dreams imagined a winter market in the snow in Bothell. That just doesn't, those words don't add up in my head. I think that's very northeastern of for the U.S. and. That was really special. Really, really nice to be out there and to see the community come together. We're almost like outgrowing Main Street for an event like that.
It was packed. It was full. It was really cool. I should get closer to the microphone when I talk. Awesome. Oh,
Well, when events like that happen, I always ask, like, what's the next one? Like, what are we looking forward to?
me too. Ask Nick.
Right? Like it's not we don't have to wait until next summer, do we? For something fun?
They're not going to answer that question.
Give me money, give me people.
Like,
I'll make it
summer is
happen.
so long from now. That's all I'm thinking. Like, what can we do before then?
A snowplow ride-along, sounds like.
Sounds cool. Well, there is, the porch lights. If your house is decorated and on the map, then people will be driving by and enjoying your porch lights.
Oh my goodness, driving down here off my hill because one of my neighbors is one of the porch, in fact, I think he won last year. There was already, coming down to city council tonight, there was already a line all the way up my street for people watching, so. Neighborhood needs to bring it up a notch and start having hot cocoa or something on the side there.
Give rewards to your neighbors for putting lights up, just so you can have, like, what's the longest row of houses with lights on? Yeah, every once in a while I'm like, but you're like interrupting the flow. Like, there was lights and then you don't have any. Anyway.
All right. We are going to move into closed session pursuant to RCW 4230-144A, labor negotiations, anticipated to last 30 minutes with no action. We will adjourn at 10:15. No, but